Stage lights illuminate the Kennedy Center as thunderous applause erupts. Sarah Mitchell executes a perfect pirouette, her graceful movements embodying the white swan on stage. The audience rises in a standing ovation, captivated by the 23-year-old's sublime performance. She bows, auburn hair framing a face radiant with triumph, eyes glistening with the culmination of years of discipline and dedication. The image shatters, rain pounds against windshield wipers struggling to clear the view on a dark highway. Headlights blind through the downpour. Tires screech, metal crumples, glass shatters. 8 months later, sterile hospital lights cast harsh shadows across Sarah's hollow face as she sits motionless in a wheelchair. Her once powerful dancer's legs lie useless beneath a blanket. Her elegant fingers grip the armrests until her knuckles turn white. The corridors of Walter Reed National Military Medical Center echo with the squeaking wheels of her chair, a constant reminder of her shattered life. "The car is ready, Sarah." Robert Mitchell's voice carries the gentleness he reserves only for his daughter. At 58, he stands 6'2" with broad shoulders and silver-streaked dark hair that speaks of authority rather than age. His tailored suit can't hide the military bearing from his younger years. His face, weathered by decades of boardroom battles and Pentagon meetings, now carries a new line for every day his daughter has been in that chair. Sarah doesn't respond. She stopped responding to most things months ago. A young nurse approaches with medications. "I'll take those," Robert interrupts, extending his hand. The nurse, recognizing the tone of a man accustomed to being obeyed, hands over the paper bag without question. As they move down the corridor, Sarah catches her reflection in the window. She barely recognizes herself. Her once vibrant auburn hair hangs limp around a gaunt face. At 23, she looks both younger in her vulnerability and older in her despair. The memories flood back unbidden, as they always do. The thunderous applause at Kennedy Center last November. The standing ovation led by the Secretary of State himself. The critic from the New York Times calling her the most promising American ballerina of her generation. All evaporated on a rain-slicked road when a semi-truck jackknifed across 3 lanes. Outside, a specially modified Suburban with a wheelchair lift waits, another reminder of her new reality. Robert's security team moves with practiced efficiency, shielding her from light rain as she's transferred into the vehicle. Sarah catches her father slipping the lead security man a folded newspaper. The headlines are partially visible. Mitchell Defense stock falls amid CEO's extended absence. "Ignore it," she says, her first words all day. "Go back to the office. I can handle a car ride with just the driver." Robert settles beside her. The board can wait. They've been waiting for 8 months. Another few weeks won't kill them. Sarah turns away, staring at the Maryland countryside as it gives way to Virginia suburbs. She knows what this is costing him. Not just money, though. There's been plenty of that. Private nurses, experimental treatments, consultations with specialists flown in from Switzerland, Japan, Israel. Robert Mitchell has leveraged his considerable influence to get her into clinical trials not open to the public. He has converted an entire wing of their Alexandria mansion into a rehabilitation facility with equipment many hospitals couldn't afford. None of it has worked. 3 weeks later, Robert places a folder on the table between them in the library of their Alexandria mansion. "Eagle's Nest," he says, opening it to reveal photographs of a sprawling facility nestled in the mountains. "A recovery center in the Blue Ridge Mountains at about 3 hours from here." Sarah doesn't reach for the folder. "Another rehab center. What makes this one different from the last 5? "Their approach. They combine conventional therapy with less conventional methods." Sarah raises an eyebrow. "What, like crystal healing? Miracle water from mountain springs?" "Nothing like that," Robert says with surprising patience. "Their program is based on neuroplasticity research, but they incorporate elements of psychological recovery that most facilities overlook. They've had success with patients who showed no improvement elsewhere." "And how much is this miracle cure going to cost?" Sarah knows the question is unfair even as she asks it. Money has never been the issue. "It's not about the ton," Robert says quietly. "It's about finding the right place for you right now." Sarah turns toward the window, watching the first buds of spring struggling against lingering cold. "So you're sending me away? Shipping me off to some mountain retreat when nothing else has worked?" Her voice cracks with emotion. Why not just accept what every doctor has told us? This, she gestures violently at her legs, is permanent. Robert leans forward, his face carved with determination. Because I know my daughter. The Sarah Mitchell I raised would never give up on anything without a fight, and I'm not about to give up on her either. The words hang in the air between them. Sarah turns away, but not before Robert sees the flicker of something cross her face, the first spark he's seen in months. 3 months, he says softly. Give it 3 months. If you don't see any improvement, any at all, we'll try something else. Rain drizzles across the windshield as Robert's car winds up the mountain road toward Eagle's Nest. The modern world seems to fall away with each mile of ascent into the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. Cell reception bars disappear from Sarah's phone, another cord to her former life severed. The isolation is part of the treatment, Robert explains, noting her frustration. No distractions from the outside world. Sarah stares out the window. Or no witnesses to the disappointment. Eagle's Nest Recovery Center appears around a bend in the road, a collection of wooden buildings nestled in a clearing surrounded by towering pine trees. The main structure is larger than Sarah expected, with wide windows and a wraparound porch. Smaller cabins dot the property, connected by stone pathways. As their car pulls up to the entrance, Sarah notices something strange about the architecture. Beneath the rustic exterior, there's a solidity to the main building that seems at odds with its surroundings. The foundations are unusually thick. The windows, while large, are reinforced in a way that speaks of function over form. A woman in her early 50s emerges from the main doors. Her silver-streaked hair is pulled back in a practical bun, her clothing casual but professional. Khaki pants and a blue button-down beneath a light jacket with the Eagle's Nest logo. Mr. Mitchell, she says, extending her hand to Robert as he exits the car. I'm Dr. Eleanor Blackwood, director of Eagle's Nest. We spoke on the phone. She turns to Sarah as the driver deploys the wheelchair lift. And you must be Sarah. Welcome to Eagle's Nest. Sarah nods without speaking. She has perfected the art of acknowledging people without engaging them. The interior of the main building continues the theme of rustic luxury, polished hardwood floors, exposed beams, comfortable furniture arranged in conversational groupings. But again, Sarah notices odd details. The unusual thickness of the interior walls. The slight elevation change between sections of the building. Doors that seem unnecessarily heavy. Eagle's Nest was established 15 years ago, Doctor. Blackwood explains as she leads them through the facility. Before that, this property was privately owned. We've maintained much of the original structure while adapting it to our needs. They're shown to Sarah's accommodations, a private cabin near a small lake, equipped with accessible features that somehow managed not to look medical. The space is warm and inviting, with large windows offering views of the water and mountains beyond. I'll leave you to get settled, Dr. Blackwood says. Tomorrow we'll begin your assessment and develop your treatment plan. Dinner is served in the main hall at 6, but if you prefer, meals can be brought to your cabin. After Dr. Blackwood and Robert leave, Sarah wheels herself onto the small deck attached to her cabin. The mountain air is crisp, carrying the scent of pine and something else. A metallic tang that reminds her of approaching storms. The sky above is clear, however, stars emerging in numbers she never sees in Alexandria. For the first time in months, Sarah feels something other than numbness or despair. It isn't hope, she's far from that, but perhaps a moment of peace in the quiet of the mountains. 2 weeks pass with little change. Sarah submits to the familiar routine of assessments, doctors measuring responses, testing reflexes that don't exist, documenting the exact parameters of her paralysis. She attends physical therapy sessions that seem pointless, occupational therapy that feels like mockery. What occupation could a paralyzed dancer hope for? She takes her meals alone in her cabin, avoiding the pitying glances of other patients. Robert visits twice, his presence both comforting and suffocating. They rarely speak beyond pleasantries, the gulf between them widening despite his efforts to bridge it. On the 15th day, Dr. Blackwood arrives at Sarah's cabin after breakfast. I'd like to try something different, she says. Your response to conventional therapy has been limited. Sarah gives a bitter laugh. You mean non-existent. I mean, Dr. Blackwood says evenly, that we need to adjust our approach. I'd like you to work with a specialist, someone not officially on staff, but who volunteers at Eagle's Nest part-time. Another doctor with a miracle cure? Not a doctor, at least not in the conventional sense. And he doesn't offer miracles, just a different perspective. Dr. Blackwood's expression softens slightly. His methods are unconventional but effective with certain patients. Let me guess, holistic healing? Mind over matter? In a way, though he'd never use those terms. Dr. Blackwood checks her watch. He's working in the greenhouse this morning. I can take you there if you're willing to meet him. Sarah hesitates, then shrugs. Why not? It's not like I have a busy social calendar. The greenhouse sits at the edge of the property, a large glass structure filled with plants of all varieties. As they approach, Sarah sees a man moving among rows of greenery, his back to them. He's dressed in worn jeans and a faded flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with lean muscle. Dr. Blackwood opens a door. Jack, do you have a moment? The man turns and Sarah gets her first clear look at him. He's in his mid-40s with crow's feet at the corners of his eyes that speak of laughter rather than age. His hair is dark brown with hints of early gray at the temples, cut short in a style that suggests practicality over fashion. Dr. Blackwood, he acknowledges with a nod, then looks at Sarah with warm, assessing eyes. This must be Sarah Mitchell. Sarah, this is Jack Thompson, Dr. Blackwood introduces. Jack, Sarah has been with us for 2 weeks with limited response to conventional therapy. Jack wipes his hands on a cloth and approaches, stopping a respectful distance from Sarah's wheelchair. He doesn't extend his hand, sensing perhaps that she prefers her space. Mind if I observe for a minute? He asks Sarah directly. Before she can respond, the greenhouse door opens again, and a man in his 60s with a pronounced limp enters. His left arm hangs slightly awkward at his side. Sorry I'm late, Jack, he says. The new medication is making me foggy in the mornings. No problem, Thomas, Jack replies. We're just about to start. This is Sarah Mitchell. She's new to Eagle's Nest. Thomas nods to Sarah, then moves to a workbench where a pottery wheel is set up. You do ceramics therapy? Sarah asks, unable to hide her skepticism. Jack smiles. Among other things, Thomas, show Sarah what you were working on yesterday. Thomas sits at the wheel and places his hands on a partially formed clay pot. His left hand moves awkwardly, with limited control. Thomas had a stroke 18 months ago, Jack explains quietly to Sarah. When he came here, he had almost no use of his left side. Sarah watches as Thomas begins to work the clay, his movements becoming more fluid as he concentrates. I'm not focusing on the movement, Thomas explains, sensing her attention. Jack taught me to focus on the feeling instead. The clay's texture, the pressure needed, the connection between my hand and the material. The brain doesn't recognize the difference between imagining a movement and actually performing it, Jack adds. The same neural pathways activate either way. By focusing on sensation rather than motion, we can sometimes bypass the blocks that conventional physical therapy can't address. Sarah watches as Thomas completes his session, creating a simple but symmetrical pot using both hands with increasing dexterity. After Thomas leaves, Jack turns to Sarah. I know you don't want to be here, he says directly, and that's actually a good starting point. At least we can be honest with each other. Honest about what? That this is another waste of time? Jack considers her, his expression thoughtful rather than offended. You were a dancer. Ballet, right? Was being the operative word. Tell me what you miss most about it. The question catches Sarah off guard. Most doctors ask about her pain levels, her bathroom routine, her adaptation to the wheelchair. No one asks what she misses. Everything, she finally says. The discipline, the expression, the feeling of perfectly executing a movement you have practiced thousands of times. Jack nods. That's what we'll work on then. What, dancing? Sarah can't keep the bitterness from her voice. In case you haven't noticed, I'm paralyzed from the waist down. I noticed, Jack says calmly, but dance isn't just about movement. It's about connection between mind and body, between expression and emotion, between the dancer and the audience. Those connections still exist, even if the physical pathways are damaged. Sarah stares at him, torn between anger at his presumption and an unwilling spark of interest in his approach. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at Cabin 7, Jack says. Wear comfortable clothes, nothing fancy. As Dr. Blackwood wheels Sarah back toward her cabin, the doctor notices her thoughtful expression. Jack has an unusual background, she offers. He served as a combat medic during the Gulf War before completing his medical training. If he's a doctor, why doesn't he work here officially? Dr. Blackwood's expression grows guarded. Jack has his reasons for preferring places off the beaten path. He'll explain if you decide to work with him. That evening, unable to settle to her usual routine of staring out windows, Sarah explores more of the Eagle's Nest grounds. The facility is larger than she initially realized, with paths winding through woods and gardens, some wheelchair accessible, and others clearly not meant for her. As she navigates the property, she finds herself drawn to a section that seems older than the rest. A stone building with narrow windows and a heavy wooden door. The door is locked, but through the windows she can see what looks like storage space. Shelves lined with boxes, furniture draped in protective covers. Yet something about the building nags at her attention. The construction is different, utilitarian rather than aesthetic, with unusually thick walls and reinforced corners. That area is off limits to patients, a voice says behind her, causing her to start. Dr. Blackwood stands a few yards away, her expression neutral but her posture alert. Safety concerns with the older structures. What was it used for? Sarah asks, unable to keep the curiosity from her voice. Storage mostly these days, Dr. Blackwood replies smoothly. The original property had several outbuildings. We've repurposed what we could and sealed off the rest. Before Sarah can press further, Blackwood changes the subject. I understand you'll be working with Jack starting tomorrow. He has an unusual approach, but I've seen remarkable results with his patients. What exactly does he do? Sarah asks, wheeling away from the stone building with reluctance. Everyone keeps talking about his methods without explaining what they are. Jack believes in treating the whole person, not just the physical symptoms, Dr. Blackwood explains as they move along the path. His background gives him a unique perspective on trauma and recovery. His military service, you mean? Dr. Blackwood nods. Jack served as a combat medic in the Gulf War. He has first-hand experience with catastrophic injuries and their psychological impacts. She pauses, choosing her next words carefully. He also has a personal understanding of loss and adaptation. Sarah thinks of the boy she glimpsed her first day, the child walking alone, carrying what looked like a sketchbook. He has a son, she says. Yes, Noah, he's 8. Jack is a single father. His wife died 5 years ago. Car accident. Mr. Blackwood's voice softens. Jack couldn't save her despite his medical training. It changed his approach to healing, made him look beyond conventional methods. The parallels to her own situation are not lost on Sarah. And now he's going to work his magic on me, she says, unable to keep the skepticism from her voice. Jack doesn't believe in magic, Dr. Blackwood replies with unexpected sharpness. He believes in science that hasn't been fully explored yet. He believes in the body's capacity to heal itself given the right circumstances. She stops, turning to face Sarah directly. And he believes that healing starts in the mind, not the body. The next morning dawns with crystalline clarity unique to mountain elevations. Sarah wakes earlier than usual, her sleep disturbed by dreams she can't quite remember, fragments of images that dissolve like mist when she tries to focus on them. By 8:45, she's wheeling along the path toward Cabin 7, the morning sun warming her face. The facility is quiet, most patients still at breakfast in the main hall. Birds call from the surrounding forest, their songs punctuated by the occasional rustling of small animals in the underbrush. As she approaches the cabin, Sarah notices details she missed from a distance. Unlike the other buildings, Cabin 7 sits slightly apart, nestled against the tree line as if seeking privacy. The structure itself is older, its weathered logs speaking of decades rather than years. A thin curl of smoke rises from the stone chimney, suggesting a fire despite the mild spring morning. She hesitates at the bottom of the ramp, suddenly uncertain. What is she doing here? What does she expect from this unconventional doctor with his talk of connection and new paths forward? Before she can reconsider, the door opens, and Jack stands framed in the entrance. Right on time, he says, his voice carrying in the clear mountain air. He wears simple clothing again, cargo pants and a faded flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Come on in. The fire's just getting going. The interior of the cabin is warm and smells of cedar and wood smoke. The open floor plan allows Sarah to see everything at once. The small kitchenette in one corner, the sleeping area partitioned by a half wall, the central living space dominated by a stone fireplace where flames dance over seasoned logs. Bookshelves line every available wall, filled with an eclectic mix of medical text, wilderness survival guides, and what appear to be vintage military manuals. Coffee aisle, Jack offers, already moving toward the kitchenette. Yes, thank you. Sarah wheels further into the room, drawn to the warmth of the fire. She notices a collection of photographs on the mantel. Jack in military uniform, much younger but with the same steady gaze, a beautiful dark-haired woman holding a violin, her smile radiant. Noah as a toddler balanced on the hood of an old Jeep. My wife Rebecca, Jack says, noticing her attention as he returns with 2 steaming mugs. She was a concert violinist before Noah came along. Sarah accepts the coffee, unsure how to respond. Most people avoid mentioning deceased loved ones around her, as if tragedy might be contagious. She's beautiful, she says finally, the simple truth easier than platitudes. Jack nods, his expression reflective rather than pained. She was, inside and out. He settles into a chair near the fire opposite Sarah's wheelchair. Before we start, I want to make something clear. I'm not here to fix you, Sarah. The bluntness of the statement catches her off guard. Then what exactly are you here to do? To help you remember who you are beyond what's happened to you. Jack leans forward, his eyes intent. Your medical file tells me about your injury. It doesn't tell me about Sarah Mitchell. I'm not sure I know who that is anymore, she admits, the confession easier in the warm privacy of the cabin. That's where we start then. Jack sets his mug aside and reaches for a worn leather journal on the side table. This was Rebecca's. After her accident, I found it helped to remember the whole story, not just how it ended. Sarah takes the journal hesitantly. You want me to read about your wife? No, Jack says with a small smile. I want you to write about Sarah, who she was before, who she might be now. I'm not much of a writer. This isn't about writing, it's about remembering. Jack stands, moving to one of the bookshelves. Before a soldier can heal from combat trauma, they have to reconnect with who they were before the war. Your body has experienced a different kind of trauma, but the principle is the same. He returns with a small wooden box, opening it to reveal an eclectic collection of items. A small piece of pink satin ribbon, a worn ballet slipper keychain, a program from the Kennedy Center with Sarah's name prominently featured. How did you get these? She asked, recognizing items from her own belongings. Your father brought them when he visited yesterday, said they might help. Jack places the box on the table between them. Physical anchors to who you were. For the next hour, Jack guides her through an unconventional therapy session. There are no attempts to manipulate her legs, no discussions of nerve pathways or surgical options. Instead, he has her handle each item from the box, describing the memories they evoke. Her first pair of pointe shoes, the moment she learned she'd been selected for the Kennedy Center performance. The feeling of standing in the wings before stepping into the spotlight. Now close your eyes, Jack instructs. Feel the weight of that memory in your body. Where does it live? Sarah follows his directions, surprised to find herself fully engaged. In my chest, she says after a moment. In my arms. Not in your legs? No, the realization startles her. That's strange, isn't it? The memory of dancing, but not feeling it in my legs. Not strange at all. Jack's voice is steady, guiding without pushing. The essence of what dancing gave you, the expression, the connection, those things live in places your injury hasn't touched. By the end of the session, Sarah feels emotionally drained but oddly lighter, as if she had set down a burden she hadn't realized she was carrying. Jack closes the wooden box gently. Same time tomorrow, he says. In the meantime, I want you to use Rebecca's journal. Write whatever comes. No structure, no purpose, just words on a page. As Sarah prepares to leave, a framed document on the far wall catches her attention. A military commendation with Jack's name and a date from the Gulf War. The citation mentions extraordinary life-saving measures under enemy fire and is signed by a General Franklin Reynolds. You were decorated, she observes. Jack glances at the framed paper with a hint of discomfort. For doing my job, he says simply. Nothing special about saving lives when that's what you're trained for. Did you know my father during the war? Sarah asks, remembering that Robert had also served, though he rarely spoke of it. Something flickers across Jack's face, too quick to interpret. The military's a big place, he says after a slight pause. Lots of paths that never cross. The non-answer registers, but Sarah doesn't press. At the door, Jack hands her a small paper bag. Lunch, he explains. Mrs. Chambers' chicken salad sandwiches. Noah swears they're better than anything in 5 counties. The casual kindness, offered without fanfare, leaves Sarah momentarily speechless. She accepts the bag with a nod of thanks, unsure how to respond to generosity that expects nothing in return. Outside, the day has warmed considerably, sunlight filtering through the pine canopy to create dappled patterns on the path. Instead of returning to her cabin, Sarah finds herself drawn to the lake where she had spotted Noah on her first day. The peaceful setting seems ideal for attempting Jack's journal assignment. The lake is deserted, its surface a perfect mirror of the sky above. Sarah positions her wheelchair in a patch of sunlight and opens Rebecca Thompson's journal. The first few pages contain writing, elegant script detailing concert preparations and early impressions of motherhood. But most of the book remains blank, lives unlived and thoughts unrecorded. Sarah turns to a fresh page and hesitates, pen hovering above the cream-colored paper. What is there to say? How can she capture the before and after of her life, divided by a single moment on a rain-slicked road? Finally, she begins simply, before the. Words come slowly at first, then with increasing fluidity. She writes about her first ballet lesson at age 4, the discipline that had shaped her youth, the moment she realized dance was not just something she did, but something she was. She describes the physical sensations of movement, the burn in her muscles during a difficult sequence, the weightlessness of a perfect leap, the centered calm of a held arabesque. So absorbed is she in the task that she doesn't notice the approach of footsteps until a shadow falls across the page. You write small, Noah observes, peering over her shoulder, like ants marching. Sarah closes the journal instinctively, then feels foolish for the protective gesture. I didn't hear you coming. Dad says I'm quiet as a fox. Noah settles cross-legged on the ground beside her wheelchair, apparently taking her presence as invitation enough. He has a sketchbook again, along with a tin of colored pencils. Are you writing a story, he asks. Sort of, Sarah replies, finding it easier to talk to this forthright child than to most adults. Your dad asked me to write about who I used to be. Noah nods sagely. He made me do that too after Mom died. I drew pictures instead. Dad said that was okay. Sarah glances at the boy's sketchbook. May I see? Noah flips through the pages, stopping at a drawing of a woman with long dark hair, playing what appears to be a violin. The image is created with a child's hand but shows remarkable attention to detail. The curve of the woman's smile, the way her hair falls across her shoulder, the tilt of her head as she listens to music only she can hear. That's my mom, Noah says simply. Dad says if I keep drawing her, I'll never forget what she looked like. Sarah studies the image, struck by the resemblance to the photograph she had seen on Jack's mantel. You've captured her beautifully. Noah beams at the praise, then flips to a blank page and begins a new sketch, his small fingers moving with surprising dexterity. They sit in companionable silence, the only sounds the scratching of Noah's pencil and the occasional call of birds from the surrounding forest. Dad says you're going to get better, Noah remarks after several minutes. Not looking up from his drawing, Sarah feels a familiar defensiveness rising. Did he say how? Nope. Noah continues sketching, unconcerned. But Dad doesn't lie, not even about hard things. The simple faith in his father's words gives Sarah pause. Before she can respond, a movement at the edge of her vision catches her attention. Dr. Blackwood is walking quickly along a path that leads away from the main complex, heading toward the restricted area Sarah had noticed the day before. The doctor carries what looks like a metal case, her manner suggesting urgency. Noah, what's in that old stone building? Sarah asks, nodding toward the direction Dr. Blackwood had taken. Noah glances up, his expression suddenly guarded. "We're not supposed to go there," he says, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Dad says it's dangerous." "Dangerous? How?" The boy shrugs, returning to his drawing with studied concentration. "Don't know. Just dangerous." Sarah watches as Dr. Blackwood disappears around a bend in the path. The doctor's furtive behavior has sparked something in her. Curiosity, yes, but also a vague sense of unease. What is in that building that requires such secrecy? "Have you ever been inside?" she presses. Noah shakes his head vigorously. "No way. That's where the bad dreams come from." "Bad dreams?" "The ones that make Dad wake up shouting sometimes." Noah's pencil stills, his expression troubled. "He thinks I don't hear, but I do." Before Sarah can ask more, Noah abruptly changes the subject, pointing to a formation of clouds overhead. "That one looks like a dragon. See, with fire coming out." Sarah allows the diversion, recognizing the boy's reluctance to continue the previous conversation. They spend the next hour cloud watching and sketching, Noah's chatter filling the space between them with observations about wildlife and stories of his adventures exploring the grounds with Jack. When noon approaches, Noah gathers his things. "I have to go. Mrs. Chambers is teaching me fractions after lunch." He makes a face that eloquently expresses his feelings about mathematics. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Sarah asks, surprised to find herself looking forward to the prospect. Noah grins, revealing a missing front tooth. "Good. I'm going to draw you a surprise." With that, he dashes off along the path toward the main building, energy radiating from his small frame. Sarah watches him go, struck by how easily the boy had slipped past her defenses. There is something about Noah's direct approach to life, his acceptance of both joy and sorrow as natural parts of existence, that makes her own emotional walls seem suddenly flimsy and unnecessary. She turns back to Rebecca's journal, reading over what she had written. The words seemed to belong to someone else, a girl who had lived in her body before the accident, whose identity had been so thoroughly defined by movement that its absence had left her unnamed. Who is she now, if not a dancer? The question follows her back to her cabin, where she spends the afternoon alternating between writing in the journal and staring out at the mountains, lost in thought. As evening approaches, Sarah makes an unusual decision to join the other patients for dinner in the main hall, her first time doing so since arriving at Eagle's Nest. The dining area is designed to feel like an upscale lodge, with exposed beams, a massive stone fireplace, and long wooden tables that encourage communal eating. Sarah positions her wheelchair at the end of a table occupied by three other patients: an older man with what appears to be a stroke-affected left side, a middle-aged woman with forearm crutches, and a young man whose missing leg is evident in the empty space beneath his khakis. Conversation is minimal at first, each person focused on their meal. Then the young man, who introduces himself as Marcus, mentions he had seen Sarah with the miracle worker's kid. "You've been working with Thompson?" he asks, his tone a mixture of curiosity and something harder to define. "Just started," Sarah replies, suddenly wary. Marcus nods, exchanging glances with the woman beside him. "Figured it was only a matter of time. Mitchell's daughter and all." "What does that mean?" Sarah asks, bristling at the implication in his tone. "Just that your dad's got pull," Marcus shrugs, but his eyes remain watchful. "Word is he and Blackwood go way back." "I wouldn't know," Sarah says coolly. "My father doesn't discuss his business or connections with me." The older man across the table clears his throat. "Don't mind Marcus," he says, his speech slightly slurred from his stroke. "He's just sore because Thompson won't take him as a patient." "Not sore," Marcus corrects. "Curious. Guy shows up out of nowhere, works with a select few patients, has access to restricted areas of the facility that even Dr. Blackwood's senior staff can't enter." He leans forward, lowering his voice. "Don't you find that a little strange?" The middle-aged woman, Jean, rolls her eyes. "Here we go with the conspiracy theories again." Marcus ignores her. "All I'm saying is there's more going on here than physical therapy and nature walks. This place has history, military history." "It was a research facility," Sarah says, remembering Jack's brief explanation. "Environmental studies or something." Marcus snorts. "That's the official line, but those buildings weren't designed for studying squirrels and watersheds. The infrastructure, the reinforcements, this place was built to withstand something." Like what? Sarah finds herself drawn into the conversation despite her initial reservations. Nuclear fallout maybe, or worse. Marcus pushes his plate away, leaning closer. My grandfather was stationed at a place like this in the 60s. Classified research into chemical and biological agents, places the government could deny if things went wrong. Jean sighs dramatically. And here I thought the fresh mountain air might clear out some of that paranoia, Marcus. Call it what you want, Marcus replies, unperturbed. But I've seen Thompson and Blackwood entering that old stone building after hours. Whatever they're doing, it's not standard rehab. Sarah thinks of Dr. Blackwood's furtive behavior earlier that day, the metal case she had carried toward the restricted building. Maybe they're just reviewing old records, she suggests, though the explanation sounds weak even to her own ears. Maybe, Marcus concedes, or maybe they're continuing whatever research started here 50 years ago. He fixes Sarah with an intent gaze. You're working with Thompson now. Keep your eyes open. You might see things the rest of us don't get access to. The conversation shifts to more mundane topics after that, but Marcus's words linger in Sarah's mind as she returns to her cabin later that evening. The questions they raise feed into her own growing suspicions about Eagle's Nest. The unusual architecture, the restricted areas, Dr. Blackwood's evasiveness, Jack's non-answer about knowing her father. Sleep is elusive that night. Sarah lies awake, her mind spinning with half-formed theories and unanswered questions. When she finally drifts off near dawn, her dreams are fragmented and uneasy. Corridors that lead nowhere, locked doors, the sound of machinery humming behind thick walls. She wakes to the sound of raindrops pattering against her cabin roof. The mountains are shrouded in mist, the lake barely visible through the gray curtain of steady rainfall. The weather matches her mood, unsettled and overcast with lurking shadows. Despite the rain, Sarah makes her way to Cabin 7 for her scheduled session with Jack. She finds him already there, building a fire against the morning chill. Noah sits at a small table by the window, focused intently on a model airplane, his tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. Morning, Jack greets her, his voice warm despite the weather. Hope you don't mind company today. School's canceled because Mrs. Chambers has a doctor's appointment in town. I don't mind, Sarah replies, surprised to find it true. Noah's presence is more comforting than intrusive. The boy looks up from his model long enough to offer a gap-toothed smile. I'm building a P-51 Mustang, he announces proudly, just like the one Grandpa flew. Jack shoots his son a quick glance that Sarah can't interpret. Your father was a pilot? She asks, wheeling closer to examine the model. Air Force, Jack confirms, his tone carefully neutral. Flew in Vietnam. Noah returns to his model with renewed focus, and Jack motions Sarah toward the fire. Did you try writing in the journal, he asks. Sarah nods, producing Rebecca's journal from the bag hanging from her wheelchair. It was harder than I expected. Usually is, Jack agrees. Putting yourself on paper makes things real in a way that just thinking about them doesn't. They begin the session similarly to the previous day, but with a subtle shift in focus. Where yesterday had been about remembering who she was before, today Jack guides her toward examining who she might become. The body you had is gone, he says, his directness startling, but somehow not cruel. Just like the man I was before Rebecca died is gone. We don't get those versions of ourselves back. What we get is the chance to build something new from what remains. That's not very encouraging, Sarah observes, though she finds his honesty refreshing after months of carefully worded optimism from other doctors. Isn't it? Jack challenges. Most people go their whole lives without ever having to really decide who they are. They follow the path of least resistance, becoming whatever circumstances and other people's expectations shape them into. He leans forward, his gaze intense. You've been given something rare, Sarah. The chance to deliberately choose who you become next. I didn't want that chance, she says, a flash of the old anger surfacing. I liked who I was. Jack nods, accepting her anger without judgment. I know, just like I liked being Rebecca's husband, just like Noah liked having a mother. His voice remains steady. We don't get to choose what happens to us. We only get to choose how we respond. From the table by the window, Noah's small voice pipes up. Dad says we can be proud about what we lost or grateful for what we still have. Sometimes both at the same time. Jack smiles at his son with evident pride. Wise beyond his years, that one. The session continues, more challenging than the previous day, but also more engaging. Jack has Sarah visualize herself 5 years in the future, describing not what she would be doing, but how she would be feeling. He introduces breathing techniques developed for soldiers with PTSD, explaining how trauma lives in the body beyond the mind's conscious awareness. Throughout, Noah remains absorbed in his model building, occasionally offering unexpectedly profound observations that suggest he has been listening more closely than he appears. As their time draws to a close, Jack hands Sarah a small wooden box similar to the one they had used the day before. Your homework, he explains. Inside are photographs of patients I've worked with, people who found new paths after injuries similar to yours. I want you to look at each one and write down what you see in their eyes. What am I looking for? The unusual assignment piques Sarah's curiosity. You'll know when you see it, Jack replies cryptically. As Sarah prepares to leave, the rain having subsided to a gentle mist, Noah approaches with a folded piece of paper. I made this for you, he says, suddenly shy. It's the surprise I promised. Sarah unfolds the paper to find a drawing of herself by the lake, rendered with the same careful attention to detail he had shown in the portrait of his mother. In the drawing, Sarah is smiling, a detail that exists only in Noah's imagination, as she can't remember smiling in his presence. It's beautiful, she says softly. Thank you, Noah. The boy beams, then returns to his model airplane, the exchange complete in his mind. Outside, the mountain air is fresh with the scent of rain-washed pine. Sarah tucks Noah's drawing carefully into Rebecca's journal, oddly moved by the child's gift. As she follows the path back toward her cabin, a familiar figure emerges from the direction of the main building. Robert Mitchell returned from his business in Alexandria earlier than expected. Her father looks exactly as he always does, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that seems out of place among the rustic surroundings, his silver-streaked hair perfectly styled, his posture military straight. But there's something in his expression as he approaches, an attention that hasn't been there before. Sarah, he calls, quickening his pace. I've been looking for you. Dad, she replies, surprised by his sudden appearance. I thought you weren't coming back until next week. Plans changed. Robert reaches her, his eyes scanning her face with unusual intensity. Where have you been? The question carries a note of demand that sparks her defenses. Therapy session with Jack Thompson. Robert's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. I see. And how was it? Different, Sarah says cautiously, noting her father's barely concealed tension. But interesting. I'd like to meet this Thompson, Robert states, his tone making it clear this is more than casual interest. Dr. Blackwood speaks highly of him, but I prefer to make my own assessments. He's probably still at his cabin, Sarah says, gesturing back the way she had come. Cabin 7, near the tree line. Robert nods, his expression unreadable. I'll find him. You should get out of this damp air. We don't want you catching cold on top of everything else. The comment, well-intentioned but infantilizing, would have irritated Sarah a week ago. Now, after her sessions with Jack, she recognizes it for what it is. Her father's attempt to control what little he could in a situation that had left him feeling powerless. I'll be fine, she assures him. The rain's almost stopped. Robert hesitates, clearly torn between his desire to see Thompson immediately and his reluctance to leave his daughter. Finally, he nods. I'll come find you after I've spoken with him. We need to discuss your treatment plan going forward. As Robert strides purposefully in the direction of Cabin 7, Sarah feels a twinge of unease. Something about her father's demeanor suggests this is more than his usual protective concern. There is an urgency to his movements, a tension in his shoulders that speaks of deeper concerns than whether his daughter's therapy is progressing adequately. Instead of returning to her cabin as Robert had suggested, Sarah finds herself wheeling along a parallel path that would allow her to circle back toward Cabin 7 without being immediately visible from the main approach. A part of her recognizes the childishness of essentially spying on her father, but her curiosity about his reaction to Jack overrides her better judgment. She positions herself near a stand of pine trees that offers a view of the cabin's entrance while providing reasonable cover. From this vantage point, she can see Robert knock on the door, his posture rigid with what she now recognizes as barely contained anger, rather than mere concern. Jack answers almost immediately, Noah visible behind him in the doorway. Even from a distance, Sarah can see the moment of recognition that passes between the two men, a flash of mutual acknowledgement that confirms her growing suspicion that they had indeed met before, despite Jack's earlier evasion. Robert says something she can't hear, his gestures sharp and controlled. Jack responds with a calmness that seems to further agitate her father. After a brief exchange, Jack steps aside, allowing Robert to enter the cabin. The door closes behind them, cutting off Sarah's view of the confrontation. Frustrated by her limited perspective, Sarah moves closer, finding a position near an open window at the side of the cabin. The voices inside are now audible, though she has to strain to hear clearly. Completely inappropriate, Robert is saying, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. You should have disclosed your involvement immediately. Would you have listened? Jack's response is measured. Or would you have dismissed me out of hand because of our history? That history, as you call it, is precisely why you shouldn't be anywhere near my daughter. Robert's voice rises slightly. Does she know about your connection to the project? About what happened to Rebecca? There is a pause before Jack responds, his voice lower now. No, and there's no reason she needs to know. What happened 20 years ago has no bearing on Sarah's treatment. Everything that happened then has bearing on this, Robert insists. Eagle's Nest isn't what she thinks it is, what any of these patients think it is. It's a rehabilitation center, Jack says firmly. Whatever it was before, that's what it is now. Is that what you tell yourself? Robert's tone is scathing. That you're just helping people recover. That there's nothing more to your work with Blackwood. My only concern is Sarah's well-being, Jack replies, an edge entering his voice for the first time. Which is more than I can say for the Mitchell Defense Systems Board of Directors. The conversation is abruptly interrupted by Noah's voice, high and clear. Dad, is something wrong? Sarah hears Jack's tone soften immediately. Nobody. Mr. Mitchell and I just need to discuss some grown-up things. Why don't you take your model to the bedroom for a while? There is the sound of movement, then a door closing. When the conversation resumes, both men have lowered their voices, making it harder for Sarah to catch every word. Not using my daughter as a test subject, Robert is saying. Never my intention, Jack replies. But you know as well as I do that the Phoenix Protocol showed promise before the shutdown. Those protocols were experimental at best, dangerous at worst, Robert counters, and they were never meant to be applied without full military oversight. The military had their chance, Jack's voice hardens. They abandoned those men, abandoned the research when it became politically inconvenient. That research cost lives, Robert hisses, including nearly yours. It also saved some, Jack insists, or have you conveniently forgotten that part? The conversation shifts again, moving away from the window and deeper into the cabin. Sarah strains to hear, but can only catch fragments now, something about original documentation, Blackwood's clearance and the general's approval. Frustrated and increasingly concerned by what she has overheard, Sarah begins to wheel away from her hiding place. As she moves, her wheelchair catches on an exposed root, causing the wheels to briefly skid on the damp ground. The noise is slight, but in the quiet aftermath of the rain, it carries. The cabin door opens abruptly, and Jack stands framed in the entrance, his eyes scanning the surrounding area with military precision. Sarah freezes, partially concealed by the pine trees, but certain she would be spotted if she moved again. For a heart-stopping moment, Jack's gaze seems to fix directly on her hiding place. Then Robert appears behind him, saying something that draws his attention back inside. The door closes, and Sarah releases the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She retreats as quietly as possible, mind racing with questions raised by the confrontation she had witnessed. What was the Phoenix Protocol they had discussed? What had happened 20 years ago that connected Jack and her father? And most disturbing of all, what was Eagle's Nest really beneath its facade of rustic rehabilitation? The rain has stopped completely now, leaving the world washed clean and glistening in the emerging sunlight. Sarah makes her way to the lake, needing space to process what she has heard. The peaceful setting stands in stark contrast to her turbulent thoughts. As she sits by the water's edge, watching ripples spread across the surface, she opens Rebecca's journal and removes Noah's drawing. The child had captured something in her expression that she hadn't seen in herself for months, a spark of life, a hint of the person she had been before the accident. Not the dancer, but the human being beneath the professional identity. The drawing reminds her of Jack's words earlier that day. We don't get to choose what happens to us. We only get to choose how we respond. Whatever secrets lay buried at Eagle's Nest, whatever connection existed between Jack and her father, Sarah realizes she is at a crossroads. She could retreat back into the numbing safety of victimhood, allowing others to make decisions about her life and treatment. Or she could choose to engage, to investigate, to reclaim agency over her own story. The choice seems clear when framed that way. If Eagle's Nest holds secrets that might affect her recovery, she deserves to know what they are. And if Jack Thompson is more than the simple healer he presents himself as, she needs to discover his true motives. With newfound determination, Sarah begins to formulate a plan. Robert would expect her to be in her cabin, processing their impending discussion about her treatment plan. That would give her a window of opportunity to investigate the restricted area, the old stone building that seems to be at the center of Eagle's Nest's mysteries. As she wheels back toward the main complex, Sarah notices increased activity around the administrative offices. Staff members move with unusual urgency, and she catches a glimpse of Dr. Blackwood through a window, engaged in what appears to be an intense conversation with two men in dark suits she doesn't recognize. Keeping to less traveled paths, Sarah makes her way toward the stone building she had observed Dr. Blackwood entering the previous day. The area is quiet now, no sign of the doctor or the mysterious metal case. The building itself looks even more forbidding in the aftermath of the rain. Its gray stone darkened by moisture, narrow windows reflecting nothing but shadow. The door, as expected, is locked, a heavy wooden barrier reinforced with metal bands that seems excessive for a simple storage facility. Sarah examines it carefully, noting the modern keypad lock that stands in stark contrast to the building's age. Whatever is inside is secured with technology far beyond what would be needed for old furniture and boxes. Frustrated but not deterred, Sarah circles the building, looking for another way in. The windows are too high for her to reach from her wheelchair, and there are no other visible entrances. As she completes her circuit, she notices something she had missed before. A basement window at ground level, partially obscured by overgrown shrubbery. Maneuvering her wheelchair as close as possible, Sarah pushes aside the wet branches to reveal a small window set deep in the stone foundation. Unlike the others, this one is not reinforced, though a layer of dust and grime makes it impossible to see inside. Using a small stick from the ground, she carefully clears some of the dirt away, creating a small section clear enough to peer through. The interior is dark, but as her eyes adjust, Sarah can make out what appears to be an old laboratory setup. Long tables with equipment covered in protective sheets, filing cabinets lined against one wall, shelves containing what look like specimen jars or containers. "It's not polite to snoop," a voice says behind her. Sarah jerks away from the window, heart pounding, to find Noah standing a few feet away. The boy's expression is unusually serious, his usual cheerfulness replaced by something that looks almost like fear. "Noah," she says, trying to keep her voice steady, "you startled me." "You're not supposed to be here," he says, glancing nervously at the building. "No one is, except Dad and Dr. Blackwood." "I was just curious," Sarah explains, wheeling away from the incriminating window. "About what's inside." Noah shifts uncomfortably. "Bad things happened here a long time ago." "What kind of bad things?" The boy shakes his head. "Dad doesn't talk about it, but sometimes I hear him and Dr. Blackwood. They argue about the soldiers." "Soldiers?" Sarah prompts gently. "The ones who didn't get better." Noah's voice drops to a whisper. "The ones like Dad." Before Sarah can ask what he means, a sharp voice cuts through the air. "Noah, what are you doing out here, Doctor?" Blackwood strides toward them, her expression a careful mask of professional concern that doesn't quite hide the alarm in her eyes. "This area is off limits to patients and visitors," she says, her gaze shifting to Sarah. "For safety reasons." "I was just exploring," Sarah says, matching the doctor's neutral tone. "Noah was kind enough to remind me about the restrictions." Dr. Blackwood places a hand on Noah's shoulder. "Why don't you run along and find your father? I believe he's looking for you." The boy hesitates, looking between Sarah and the doctor with obvious uncertainty. Then he nods and turns to go, casting one last glance at Sarah before disappearing down the path. Once Noah is out of earshot, Dr. Blackwood's professional veneer hardens. Miss Mitchell, I believe I was quite clear about this area being restricted. You were, Sarah acknowledges, but you weren't clear about why. What exactly is in that building, Doctor? Blackwood? Old research files, laboratory equipment, or something you don't want the patients to know about? The doctor's expression remains impassive, but Sarah notices a slight tightening around her eyes. The building contains remnants from the facility's previous function, nothing relevant to your treatment or recovery. Then why the secrecy? Why the keypad lock on a storage room? Some of the materials are historically sensitive, Dr. Blackwood replies smoothly. Government property that was never fully decommissioned when the facility changed hands. Government property related to something called Phoenix? Sarah asks, watching closely for the doctor's reaction. She isn't disappointed. Dr. Blackwood's composed facade cracks momentarily, surprise and alarm flashing across her features before she regains control. Where did you hear that name? Does it matter? Sarah counters. What matters is that there's something going on here beyond physical therapy and nature walks. Something that involves my father, Jack Thompson, and whatever happened in that building 20 years ago. Dr. Blackwood studies her for a long moment, calculation evident in her gaze. You're very much your father's daughter, she finally says. Same perception, same determination. She gestures toward the path. Let's continue this conversation somewhere more appropriate. As they move away from the restricted building, Sarah notices two men in dark suits watching from the edge of the tree line, the same men she had glimpsed earlier with Dr. Blackwood. Their presence adds another layer to the growing mystery surrounding Eagle's Nest. Those men, Sarah nods toward the observers, they're not part of your staff. No, Dr. Blackwood agrees, not bothering to deny their presence. They represent certain interests in the continued security of this facility. Government interests, in a manner of speaking. The doctor leads them to a small gazebo overlooking the lake, positioned where they could speak privately while remaining in full view of the main complex. What exactly do you think is happening here, Miss Mitchell? Dr. Blackwood asks, settling onto a bench. Sarah considers her response carefully. I think Eagle's Nest was something else before it became a rehabilitation center. Something military. I think whatever research was conducted here didn't end when the facility changed hands. And I think my father knew exactly what this place was when he sent me here. Dr. Blackwood nods slightly, as if Sarah had passed some kind of test. Your assessment is partially correct. Eagle's Nest was indeed a military research facility focused on neural recovery protocols for injured soldiers. When the program was officially terminated in the mid-90s, I acquired the property with the intention of continuing aspects of that research in a civilian context. Neural recovery, Sarah repeats. You mean like spinal cord injuries? Like mine? Among others, Dr. Blackwood confirms, the original Phoenix project showed remarkable promise before political considerations forced its closure. Lives that could have been saved, injuries that could have been healed, were sacrificed to bureaucratic cowardice. And my father's connection to all this? Sarah presses. Dr. Blackwood's expression grows more guarded. That's a conversation you should have with Robert directly, or with Jack Thompson, since you seem to have developed a rapport with him. I'd rather hear it from you, Sarah insists, without their filters or agendas. The doctor seems to weigh her options before responding. Your father was part of the Military Oversight Committee for Phoenix. He believed in the project's potential until complications arose with certain test subjects. After that, he became one of its most vocal critics. And Jack? Captain Thompson was one of our most promising participants, Dr. Blackwood says carefully. His unique neurological response to the protocols marked him as exceptional. Unfortunately, before we could fully document his progress, the project was terminated. Sarah processes this information, fitting it against the fragments she had overheard between Jack and her father. So Jack was a test subject, not just a combat medic? He was both, Dr. Blackwood corrects. His medical training made him particularly valuable to the research team. He understood what was happening to him in ways other subjects couldn't. And now he's here working with patients like me, Sarah says slowly, piecing it together. Using what he learned from Phoenix, the doctor amends. Honoring what Phoenix gave him. Jack's abilities after the protocols were enhanced. His understanding of neural pathways, his intuitive grasp of how trauma affects the nervous system, these are direct results of his participation in the project. The implications are staggering. Sarah tries to reconcile the straightforward healer she had come to know with this new information. A man who had been subjected to experimental protocols, who possessed abilities beyond normal medical training. Does he use these abilities on his patients? She asks, unable to keep a note of apprehension from her voice. Dr. Blackwood shakes her head. Not in the way you're imagining. Jack's approach is fundamentally holistic, combining his medical knowledge, his personal experience of trauma and recovery, and yes, the unique neural architecture that Phoenix left him with. But there are no experimental drugs, no invasive procedures, just a healer with exceptional gifts helping those in need. As they sit in the gazebo, the sun beginning its descent behind the mountains, Sarah finds herself at another crossroads. She could accept Dr. Blackwood's explanation, continue her sessions with Jack, and perhaps benefit from whatever gifts his unusual background had provided him. Or she could demand answers to the questions still lingering about Rebecca's death, about Noah's cryptic reference to soldiers who didn't get better, about the men in dark suits who watch from the shadows. Before she can decide, a figure appears on the path leading to the gazebo. Robert Mitchell, his expression set in grim determination. Behind him, at a slight distance, comes Jack Thompson, his posture suggesting reluctance but resolution. Sarah, Robert calls as he approaches, we need to talk about Eagle's Nest, about everything. The three figures approach the gazebo with the gravity of men walking into battle. Robert Mitchell leads the way, his military bearing more pronounced than ever, silver hair catching the late afternoon sun. Jack Thompson follows, his movements fluid despite the tension evident in his shoulders. Dr. Blackwood stands to greet them, her professional demeanor firmly in place. Sarah feels suddenly vulnerable, seated in her wheelchair at the center of what is clearly a long-brewing confrontation. Whatever secrets had been buried at Eagle's Nest were about to surface, with her somehow at the epicenter. I see you've already started the conversation, Robert says, his voice tight as he glances between Sarah and Dr. Blackwood. How much have you told her? The basic framework, Dr. Blackwood replies evenly. The rest should come from you and Captain Thompson. Jack winces slightly at the military title. Haven't been Captain Thompson for a long time, Eleanor. Robert turns to Sarah, his expression softening as it always does when he looks at his daughter. I owe you an explanation. Several, in fact. He takes a seat on the bench opposite her wheelchair. I should have been honest from the beginning about Eagle's Nest, about Jack, about all of it. Then be honest now, Sarah says, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. What is this place really? And why did you send me here? Robert exchanges glances with Jack before answering. Eagle's Nest was a classified military research facility operational from 1963 until 1995. Its official designation was the Neural Recovery Research Division, but those of us involved knew it as Project Phoenix. Phoenix, Sarah repeats, like the mythical bird that rises from its ashes. Exactly, Dr. Blackwood interjects. The name was chosen deliberately, symbolizing rebirth after catastrophic injury. Robert continues, his voice taking on the cadence he uses in board presentations. The project was established during the Cold War, initially focusing on treating traumatic brain injuries sustained by intelligence operatives. By the 80s, its scope had expanded to include spinal cord injuries, nerve damage from chemical exposures, and other neurological trauma common among combat veterans. And you were part of this? Sarah asks, looking between her father and Jack. I served on the Oversight Committee, Robert confirms. As a rising star at Mitchell Defense, I was tasked with evaluating the project's progress in potential military applications. His eyes shift briefly to Jack. Jack was something else entirely. All eyes turn to Jack, who stands with his hands in his pockets, looking out over the lake. After a moment, he speaks without turning. I was a test subject, one of dozens recruited from military medical units because of our understanding of trauma care. His voice is flat, stripped of emotion. We were told the protocols would enhance our ability to treat wounded soldiers in the field. What they didn't tell us was that we were the experiment, not just participants in it. The Phoenix protocols were groundbreaking, Dr. Blackwood says, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her tone. Neural stimulation combined with targeted cellular regeneration. Nothing like it had been attempted before or since. They were experimental and dangerous, Robert counters sharply, especially the later variations. They worked on some of us, Jack turns finally, his gaze meeting Sarah's. That's the part your father doesn't like to remember. For every failure, there were successes, soldiers who recovered abilities no one thought possible. Sarah tries to process what she's hearing. So you what? Gained some kind of healing powers from these experiments? Jack shakes his head, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. Nothing so dramatic. The protocols altered certain neural pathways, creating new connections that allowed some of us to perceive the body's electrical systems more acutely, to feel where energy was blocked, where connections were broken. He flexes his hands unconsciously. In my case, it also enhanced proprioception, awareness of my body in space, and with it, the ability to guide others in reconnecting with their own bodies. That's why your approach is different, Sarah realizes. You're not just using standard medical knowledge. I'm using everything I have, Jack confirms, including the changes Phoenix left me with. Robert stands abruptly, pacing the small confines of the gazebo. What Jack isn't telling you is the cost of those changes. The men who didn't survive the protocols, the ones who did survive, but were never the same. He stops, fixing Jack with a hard stare. Tell her about Rebecca. A shadow passes over Jack's features. For the first time since Sarah had met him, she sees raw pain break through his careful composure. Rebecca was part of the research team, he says, voice softening, a neurologist specializing in music therapy as a pathway to neural recovery. We met during my time as a subject, fell in love, got married after I left the program. His voice grows quieter. She was the one who first noticed the changes in me, subtle differences in how I moved, how I perceived physical sensations. She called it body empathy, the ability to sense others' physical states almost as if they were my own. In the accident, Sarah prompts gently, remembering Dr. Blackwood's words about Jack's wife. Jack's eyes close briefly. 5 years ago, we were driving back from a medical conference in Richmond. Semi-truck lost control on a wet highway, jackknifed across 3 lanes. His eyes open, meeting Sarah's with startling intensity. Just like your accident, a chill runs through Sarah despite the warmth of the evening. That can't be coincidence. It wasn't, Robert says grimly. The truck that hit you was carrying experimental composite materials developed by a Mitchell Defense subsidiary, the same composites that were in the truck that struck Jack and Rebecca. Your company's truck hit me? Sarah's voice rises with disbelief. And you never told me? Robert holds up his hands. It wasn't that simple. The truck was contracted by a competitor, Meridian Systems, but carrying our materials. The driver was found to have been drugged, his route deliberately altered to intercept yours. His voice grows heavy. It wasn't an accident, Sarah. It was industrial espionage gone wrong. They wanted our prototype materials. They never meant to hurt you. The revelation strikes Sarah like a physical blow. For 8 months, she had been picturing a random tragedy, a moment of bad luck that had destroyed her career and future. The idea that it had been deliberate, even if she wasn't the intended target, shifts the foundations of her understanding. Why wouldn't you tell me this, she asks, anger building beneath her shock. Because it's still an active FBI investigation, Robert replies, and because I was trying to protect you from the truth, that your injury was collateral damage in a corporate war. His voice breaks slightly. My corporate war. Dr. Blackwood steps forward. When Robert contacted me about your case, I recognized the pattern immediately. The similarities to Jack's accident were too precise to ignore. So you brought me here to work with Jack because he survived a similar crash? Sarah asks. I brought you here because Jack has helped patients recover from spinal cord injuries that conventional medicine had written off as permanent, Robert corrects. His success rate with certain types of neurological trauma is unprecedented. And yes, because he understood what happened to you in a way no other doctor could. Sarah turns to Jack. Did you know about this connection when we started working together? Jack nods slowly. I knew about the similarities in our accidents. Dr. Blackwood briefed me before you arrived. His expression grows troubled. What I didn't know until yesterday was that your father had blocked my earlier attempts to contact you. Robert has the grace to look uncomfortable. I had concerns about Thompson's methods, his connection to Phoenix, the fact that he was no longer practicing medicine through conventional channels. You were afraid of what I might tell her, Jack challenges. About Phoenix, about Mitchell Defense's role in it. I was protecting my daughter, Robert insists. From what? Sarah demands. The truth or your part in it? The confrontation is interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps on the gravel path. Noah appears, running toward the gazebo with unusual urgency, his small face tight with worry. Dad, he calls, the men in suits are at our cabin. They're looking through your things. Jack straightens immediately, all traces of the philosophical healer replaced by the alert readiness of a soldier. Stay here, he instructs, already moving toward the path. Wait, Robert commands, his voice snapping with authority. If Meridian's people are here, none of us should be alone. He turns to Dr. Blackwood. Security protocols, Eleanor. Now. The doctor nods sharply, pulling a small device from her pocket and pressing a sequence of buttons. In the distance, a low alarm begins to sound from the main building. Lockdown, she explains to Sarah. Standard procedure for security breaches. All patients will be moved to the central facility until the threat is contained. Jack has reached Noah, kneeling to speak to him quickly before sending him toward the main complex with a gentle push. He returns to the gazebo, his expression grim. If they're searching my cabin, they know about the files, he says to Robert. How much does Sarah need to know? Everything, Sarah interjects before her father can answer. I need to know everything. Robert hesitates, then nods. The stone building. We need to get there before they do. The unlikely group moves quickly through the gathering dusk, Robert pushing Sarah's wheelchair along paths that have suddenly become fraught with hidden meanings and dangers. Jack leads the way, his movements fluid and watchful, while Dr. Blackwood brings up the rear, communicating through a small radio with what appears to be a security team. As they approach the stone building, Sarah notices the keypad lock has been disengaged, the heavy door standing slightly ajar. Jack motions for them to stop, then moves forward alone, his posture shifting subtly into a combat stance she has never seen him use before. After a tense moment, he beckons them forward. Clear for now, but they've been here recently. He points to scuff marks on the floor inside. They knew exactly what they were looking for. The interior of the building is a stark contrast to the rustic atmosphere of Eagle's Nest. Clinical white walls, polished concrete floors, and stainless steel fixtures create an environment that feels displaced in time, neither fully modern nor properly historic. The main room contains what looks like medical equipment draped in protective covers, filing cabinets lined against one wall, and a series of computer workstations that appear surprisingly current. The original Phoenix laboratory, Dr. Blackwood explains as they enter, preserved much as it was when the program was officially terminated, but with updated monitoring systems. You've been continuing the research, Sarah realizes, taking in the clearly operational equipment. All this time with significant modifications, the doctor clarifies, and with strictly civilian applications, no military involvement, no experimental protocols without full informed consent. Robert moves to one of the workstations, typing rapidly on a keyboard. The digital archives appear untouched, he reports. But the physical files, Jack confirms, examining an empty cabinet, all of them gone. Der Blackwood swears under her breath. The original research journals, the handwritten observations from the early test subjects, irreplaceable documentation of the protocol's development. And proof of what really happened here, Jack adds grimly. Who was responsible for the side effects? The deaths. Robert turns to Sarah, his expression grave. There's something else you need to see, something that explains why I brought you to Eagle's Nest. He gestures toward a doorway at the far end of the room, the lower level. Jack moves to Sarah's wheelchair. The elevator is this way, he says quietly, installed during the original construction for moving equipment between floors. The elevator is small but functional, designed to accommodate medical gurneys according to the faded markings on its interior. As they descend, Sarah feels the air grow cooler, carrying the faint antiseptic scent she had detected in her dreams of this place. The doors open to reveal a corridor lined with heavy doors, each bearing a number in what looks like a medical classification code. The walls are institutional green, the floors the same polished concrete as above. Fluorescent lights hum overhead, casting everything in a harsh, shadowless illumination that feels deliberately exposing. The treatment rooms, Dr. Blackwood says, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space, where the protocols were administered. Jack's face has gone tight, his breathing carefully controlled. Sarah realizes with a shock that he is fighting some powerful physical response to being here, a memory written into his body that transcends the passing years. "You were down here," she says softly, "as a patient." He nods once, sharp and controlled. 16 weeks, the longest any subject remained in active protocol administration. His voice is flat, stripped of emotion. Room 7, end of the hall. Robert leads them past several closed doors until they reach a room marked with the number 12. Unlike the others, this door stands partially open, light spilling from within. He pauses, looking from Jack to Sarah. "What's in there has been classified at the highest levels for 20 years, he says quietly. "What I'm about to show you violates at least 6 federal statutes. But you deserve to know. Both of you." The room beyond is smaller than Sarah expected, dominated by a central examination table surrounded by monitoring equipment. One wall is covered with photographs and medical charts. Dozens of faces, mostly men, but some women, their expressions uniformly solemn as they stared into the camera. Service members, Sarah realizes, recognizing the bearing, if not the now outdated uniforms. "The Phoenix cohort," Dr. Blackwood explains, following Sarah's gaze to the wall of photographs. 83 subjects between 1986 and 1990, combat medics, field surgeons, medical technicians, all with direct experience treating trauma under battlefield conditions. "How many survived the protocols?" Sarah asks, noting the red marks through certain photographs. 67 completed the full course, Jack answers before Dr. Blackwood can speak. 52 survived the first year after completion. 41 were still alive 5 years later. His voice remains clinical, detached, as if he were reading statistics about strangers rather than comrades. "Now there are 23 of us left. And of those 23, only 9 developed the enhanced abilities the project was designed to produce." Robert adds, 9 successes out of 83 test subjects. 1 in 9, Sarah murmurs. "Hardly seems worth the cost." "That depends on what those 9 can do," Dr. Blackwood counters. She moves to a filing cabinet in the corner, removing a thick folder marked with classified stamps and Jack's name. Captain Thompson's results were the most promising of all subjects. His neural adaptation to the protocols exceeded all projected outcomes. Jack looks away, visibly uncomfortable with the discussion of his capabilities. "Show her why she's here, Robert. No more circling the truth." Robert nods, moving to a computer workstation in the corner. After typing briefly, he steps back as a screen on the wall illuminates, displaying what appears to be a medical scan of a spinal column. "This is your initial injury assessment," he says to Sarah. "Taken immediately after your accident. Complete spinal cord injury with severe compression and transection of the cord." He taps a key, and the image changes to a second scan. "This is from 3 months ago, just before I contacted Eagle's Nest. Notice the unusual neural activity below the injury site." Sarah studies the images, recognizing enough from her months of medical consultations to see the difference. Where the first scan showed a clear break in the spinal cord, the second revealed faint but unmistakable signs of activity bridging the damaged area. "That's impossible," she whispers. "Every specialist said the damage was permanent, that the cord was completely severed. Conventional medicine doesn't account for certain types of neural regeneration," Dr. Blackwood explains, "particularly in cases where the patient has unusual genetic factors." She glances at Robert. "Factors that might be inherited." Sarah looks between her father and Jack, understanding dawning slowly. "You were in Phoenix too," she says to Robert, "not just as oversight, as a subject." Robert nods, the admission clearly difficult. "Early phase 1987. Before I founded Mitchell Defense, I was a major then, assigned to evaluate the program's potential. I volunteered for the initial protocols to understand what we were asking of our soldiers." He rolls up his sleeve, revealing a faint scar running the length of his forearm. Shrapnel wound during a site inspection in Panama. Should have lost the arm. After the protocols, full recovery in 8 weeks. The protocols alter neural pathways permanently, Dr. Blackwood continues, and there's evidence suggesting these alterations can be passed genetically to offspring. Your injury should have been permanently debilitating, Sarah, but your scans show signs of spontaneous regeneration consistent with what we observed in Phoenix subjects. You're saying I inherited some kind of healing ability from my father? Sarah asks incredulously. Not healing as such, Jack clarifies, but resilience, neuroplasticity beyond normal parameters, the ability to forge new pathways where standard medicine says none should exist. He moves to stand beside the examination table, his expression softening from clinical detachment to something more personal. That's why your father brought you here, why he sought me out despite our complicated history. Because if anyone could help you access that potential, it would be someone who's experienced it firsthand. Sarah's mind reels with implications. Her father had been part of the same experimental program that had transformed Jack. The accident that had shattered her career wasn't random chance, but deliberate corporate sabotage. And now she was being told that she possessed some inherited capacity for recovery that defied medical understanding. If you knew all this, she says to Robert, why wait 8 months? Why put me through specialist after specialist who all told me I'd never walk again? Because I needed to be sure, Robert replies, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision. The Phoenix protocols had side effects beyond the physical, neurological changes, personality alterations, psychological impacts that weren't always immediately apparent. He looks at Jack. I needed to know you were stable enough for what might be required. You were afraid I'd end up like the others, Jack states flatly, the ones who couldn't integrate the changes. Robert doesn't deny it. Rebecca's death affected you profoundly. There were reports of erratic behavior, periods of withdrawal. I needed to be certain before I entrusted my daughter to your care. And now Meridian knows, Dr. Blackwood cuts in, bringing them back to the immediate threat. They've taken the original Phoenix files, which means they know about Sarah's potential and Jack's abilities. If they're after the protocols, they're after me, Jack finishes, and possibly Sarah too, as proof of concept. The conversation is interrupted by the sound of the elevator activating above them. All four turn toward the corridor, tension immediately filling the room. Security team? Robert asked Dr. Blackwood. She shakes her head, checking her radio. All teams are securing the main building and perimeter. No one should be coming down here. Jack moves to the doorway, gesturing for the others to stay back. 3 options, he says quietly. Stay here and hope it's a friendly. Try to reach the emergency stairs at the end of the corridor, or confront whoever's coming. Noah, Sarah suddenly realizes. Where is Noah? Is he safe? With Mrs. Chambers in the secure area, Jack assures her, though concern flickers across his features. At least that's where he should be. The elevator doors slide open with a soft chime that seems jarringly normal in the tense atmosphere. 2 men in dark suits step out, followed by a third figure Sarah recognizes with a jolt. Marcus, the young amputee from the dining hall. He moves with surprising agility on his prosthetic leg, a pistol held casually at his side. Captain Thompson, he calls down the corridor. I know you're down here, you and Mitchell and his daughter. Let's not make this any more complicated than it needs to be. Jack glances back at the others, his expression grim. Stay here, he whispers. There's another way out through the specimen storage room. Blackwood knows where. He slips something from his pocket, a small key card, and presses it into Sarah's hand. Get to cabin 7 under the floorboards beneath the bed. Everything you need is there. Before anyone can stop him, Jack steps into the corridor. I'm here, Marcus, he calls, his voice steady. Just me. The others evacuated with the security team. Sarah can hear Marcus's disbelieving laugh. Nice try, Captain. But my associates have already confirmed Mitchell and his daughter came down here with you, along with the good doctor. There's a pause. We just want the files and a conversation. No one needs to get hurt. The files are gone, Jack replies. Someone beat you to them. That's disappointing, Marcus says, his voice closer now. But not catastrophic. After all, we have the next best thing, one of the original test subjects. living proof of what Phoenix could achieve. Sarah feels Robert's hand on her shoulder, squeezing gently. The storage room, he whispers. Now. Blackwood is already moving toward a door at the back of the examination room, unlocking it with a key from her pocket. Beyond lies a larger chamber filled with shelving units containing specimen jars, tissue samples preserved in fluid, and what appears to be medical equipment from several decades past. The service tunnel connects to the main building, Dr. Blackwood explains in a hushed tone as they enter. It was designed as an evacuation route in case of experimental contamination. In the corridor outside, they can hear Jack still engaged in conversation with Marcus, his voice deliberately projecting to cover the sounds of their movement. Meridian can't replicate Phoenix, he's saying. The original researchers are gone. The methodologies were never fully documented. Even the compounds used in the protocols degraded beyond usefulness years ago. That's where you're wrong, Captain, Marcus replies. Meridian has been very thorough in reconstructing the program. We have former Phoenix staff on payroll. We've synthesized improved versions of the original compounds. All we need now is verification that the long-term effects are as promising as we believe, which is where you come in, as Dr. Tarr. Blackwood leads them through the specimen storage room toward a heavy door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Sarah finds herself fighting dual impulses, to flee with her father to safety and to remain with Jack, who is placing himself in danger to protect them. The weight of the key card in her palm seems to grow heavier with each step, a tangible reminder of Jack's trust in her. Robert senses her hesitation. He knows what he's doing, Sarah, he whispers. Jack was Special Forces before he was a medic, and Phoenix enhanced more than just his healing abilities. The implication is clear. Jack is more capable of handling the armed intruders than any of them. Still, leaving him behind feels wrong in ways Sarah can't fully articulate even to herself. Dr. Blackwood has reached the door, entering a code on a keypad beside it. The lock disengages with a soft click, and she pushes it open to reveal a narrow concrete tunnel illuminated by emergency lighting strips along the floor. This will take us to the main building sublevels, she explains. From there, we can access the secure area where the other patients have been evacuated. Robert moves to take control of Sarah's wheelchair, but she stops him with a raised hand. No, she says firmly, we're not running, not without Jack. Sarah, be reasonable, Robert urges. Thompson is buying us time to get to safety. We need to use it. And then what? Sarah challenges. Let Meridian take him? Let them continue what Phoenix started with fresh test subjects? She turns her wheelchair away from the tunnel entrance. I'm not leaving him behind. Not after he's risked everything to help me. She's right, Dr. Blackwood says unexpectedly. Jack is too valuable to the patients, to our research, to the future of neural recovery therapy. We can't let Meridian take him. Robert looks between the two women, frustration evident in his expression. And what exactly do you propose? We're unarmed, outnumbered, and Sarah can't exactly run if things go badly. I don't need to run, Sarah replies with sudden conviction. I just need to be in the right place. She pulls the key card from her pocket. Jack gave me this for a reason. He has a plan, and he's trusting us to follow it. From the examination room, they hear a sudden commotion, raised voices, the sound of something heavy falling. Then silence. Dr. Blackwood moves to the storage room door, opening it a crack to peer into the room beyond. They've taken him, she reports grimly. 3 men moving toward the elevator. Jack appears to be conscious but compliant. They'll take him to the main lab upstairs, Robert surmises. More equipment there for whatever tests they want to run. Sarah makes her decision. Dr. Blackwood, get my father to safety through the tunnel, then find Noah and make sure he's secure. She turns to Robert. Dad, I need you to trust me for once. Not as your daughter who needs protection, but as someone who knows what she has to do. Robert studies her face, seeing perhaps for the first time not the injured ballerina who needed his constant intervention, but a woman with her own strength and determination. After a long moment, he nods. What's your plan? He asks simply. Cabin 7, Sarah replies. Whatever Jack left for us there, it's important enough that he made sure I had access to it, even if he couldn't get there himself. You can't go alone, Robert objects. I won't be, Sarah assures him, but I need you to coordinate with Eagle's Nest security. Keep Meridian's people contained in the main building until I can reach the cabin. Blackwood is already on her radio, speaking in rapid-coded phrases that Sarah can't follow. After a brief exchange, she turns back to them. Security teams report the perimeter is secure. All known Meridian operatives are accounted for, either in custody or in the main laboratory with Marcus and Jack. Then I have a clear path to Cabin 7, Sarah concludes. All I need is someone to help me get there faster than I can wheel myself. I'll go with her, a new voice says from the tunnel entrance. Noah stands there, his small face set in an expression of determination so like his father's that Sarah feels her breath catch. I know the fastest way through the woods, and I know where Dad keeps the important stuff. Noah, Dr. Blackwood exclaims, you should be in the secure area with Mrs. Chambers. Dad needs help, the boy replies simply, and Sarah knows how to help him. Robert looks at the child, then at his daughter. Something passes between them, a recognition perhaps of the same stubborn resolve he himself possessed. Finally, he nods. Get to the cabin, he instructs Sarah. Find whatever Jack left for you, but if there's any sign of danger, any at all, you get somewhere safe and call for help. He hands her a small radio similar to Dr. Blackwood's. Direct line to me, no matter what happens. The next few minutes pass in a blur of activity. Dr. Blackwood leads them through a different section of the tunnel system, emerging through a service door near the edge of the main complex. Security personnel in unmarked tactical gear move purposefully around the grounds, establishing a perimeter that would keep Meridian's operatives contained within the laboratory building. Noah proves to be an excellent guide, leading Sarah along paths she hadn't known existed, narrow tracks through the woods that are just wide enough for her wheelchair, but invisible to casual observation. The boy moves with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent years exploring these grounds, occasionally stopping to help navigate a particularly challenging section of terrain. Dad and I have secret paths all over, he explains as they pause for him to clear some fallen branches from their route, for when he needs to think or when I need adventure. You're very brave, Noah, Sarah says softly. Your dad would be proud of how you're helping. The boy nods, accepting the praise without false modesty. Dad says bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what needs doing, even when you are scared. He looks up at her with solemn eyes. Are you scared, Sarah? Yes, she admits, but like your dad says, that doesn't mean we stop doing what needs to be done. They reach Cabin 7 as twilight deepens into true darkness, the woods around them filled with the sounds of night creatures beginning their chorus. The cabin stands dark and still, exactly as Jack had left it earlier that day, though Sarah can see signs that someone had searched it. Cushions slightly askew, books not quite aligned on shelves, a drawer not fully closed. Noah leads her directly to the bedroom, a space she had never entered during her therapy sessions. It is spartanly furnished, a simple double bed, a nightstand with a reading lamp, and a chest of drawers that looks handmade. The boy drops to his knees beside the bed, reaching underneath to pull up a section of floorboard that had been carefully cut to appear seamless with the surrounding wood. Dad's important box, he explains, withdrawing a metal container about the size of a shoebox. He told me never to touch it unless it was an emergency or he asked me to. Sarah accepts the box, surprised by its weight. The lid is secured with a small electronic lock, a key card slot visible on one side. With a sense of ceremony that feels appropriate to the moment, she inserts Jack's card. The lock disengages with a soft click, and the lid rises slightly on hidden springs. Inside lay several items arranged with military precision. A USB drive, a leather-bound journal similar to Rebecca's but more weathered, a small case containing what appears to be medication vials, and an envelope with Sarah's name written in Jack's distinctive handwriting. She opens the envelope first, removing a single sheet of paper covered in the same handwriting. Sarah, if you are reading this, circumstances have forced my hand sooner than I'd hoped. What you'll find in this box is the truth about Phoenix, about your father's involvement, about what happened to Rebecca, and most importantly, about your own potential for recovery. The USB drive contains copies of all the original Phoenix files, including documentation of the protocols that were successful in cases similar to yours. Dr. Blackwood has the equipment to administer the treatment if you choose that path. The journal is my personal record of the past 20 years, the changes I've experienced, the abilities I've developed, and the price I've paid for them. Read it before you make any decisions about your own treatment. The medication was developed by Rebecca before her death, a refined version of the original Phoenix compounds designed to work with genetic markers similar to yours. It's safer than what was used on me, but not without risks. Whatever you decide, remember this. You are more than your injury. You are more than your ability to walk or dance. You are Sarah Mitchell, strong, determined, and fully alive, whether standing on your feet or seated in your chair. Trust yourself. You already know the way forward. Jack. Sarah stares at the letter, then at the contents of the box. Jack had prepared for this eventuality, had known that someday Meridian or another organization might come for him, might threaten what he had built at Eagle's Nest, and he had trusted her, barely more than a stranger, with the truth he had protected for decades. Noah, she says quietly, do you know how to get back to your father without being seen? The boy nods solemnly. Through the old tunnels. They connect all the original buildings. Dad showed me once, but said it was only for the biggest emergencies. I think this qualifies, Sarah replies. She hesitates, looking at the child's determined face. But it might be dangerous. Your dad wouldn't want you putting yourself at risk. Dad would do it for you, Noah says with the simple certainty of a child who knew his father's heart. He says you're special, that you can get better in ways other people can't. Sarah feels something shift inside her at the boy's words, a certainty that had been building since her first conversation with Jack by the lake. Whether it was the Phoenix inheritance from her father, Jack's unconventional therapy, or simply her own determination finally breaking through months of despair, she suddenly knows what she has to do. Help me get to the main lab, she says to Noah, placing the journal and USB drive in her wheelchair side pocket and securing the medication case in her lap. There's something I need to show Marcus and his Meridian friends. The journey through the underground tunnels is like moving through history itself. The oldest sections date from the original 1960s construction, concrete walls bearing faded civil defense markings and radiation symbols that speak to the Cold War paranoia of their creation. These give way to newer additions from the Phoenix era, clinical and utilitarian, designed for function rather than comfort. Noah moves with surprising confidence through the labyrinth, occasionally consulting marks on the walls that Sarah realizes are subtle navigational aids, perhaps left by Jack himself for just such an emergency. Dad showed me these tunnels last winter, Noah explains in a hushed voice as they navigate a particularly narrow section. When the big storm trapped us here for 3 days, he said they were built so people could move around without being seen from the air. From the air, Sarah asks. Who would be watching from the air? Noah shrugs. Russians, maybe? That's who the soldiers were worried about when they built this place. The boy's trust in her plan, formed though it is on minimal information, touches something deep within Sarah. He believes in her because his father does. It's a simple equation in his mind, and in its simplicity lies a profound truth. How much further? She whispers as they pause at an intersection of 3 tunnels. Noah points to the rightmost passage. That one goes to the main lab. The left one goes to the stone building, where Dad doesn't like to go. The middle one leads to the supply shed near the lake. He hesitates, his small face serious in the dim emergency lighting. The lab will have guards, bad men with guns. Sarah nods, trying to project a confidence she doesn't entirely feel. That's why we're going to be very quiet. Like foxes, remember? Noah's expression brightens slightly at the reference to their earlier conversation. Quiet as foxes, he agrees. They emerge from the tunnels through a service door that opens into a storage room adjacent to the main laboratory. Sarah can hear voices from beyond, Marcus speaking in the authoritative tone of someone used to being obeyed, another man responding in clipped technical language, and beneath it all, Jack's deeper voice, calm, despite what must be a threatening situation. Stay here, she whispers to Noah, positioning her wheelchair near the door. No matter what happens, don't come out until I call for you or your dad comes to get you. The boy nods, his eyes wide but determined. Be careful, he whispers back. Dad says Meridian people don't play fair. Sarah squeezes his hand once, then wheels herself through the door into the main laboratory. The scene before her is surreal in its clinical detachment. Jack sits in a chair in the center of the room, electrodes attached to his temples and chest, monitoring equipment displaying his vital signs on screens nearby. Marcus stands beside him, now dressed in a lab coat over his casual clothes. The transformation from fellow patient to Meridian operative complete. Two men in tactical gear stand by the main entrance, weapons holstered, but clearly accessible. A woman Sarah hasn't seen before paces slowly around Jack, studying the readings on the monitors. She's in her early 50s, elegantly dressed in a tailored suit that speaks of corporate power. Her silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. There's something vaguely familiar about her features, though Sarah is certain they've never met. Sarah Mitchell, Marcus says, registering her presence with only mild surprise. I was wondering when you'd join us, though I expected your father rather than a solo appearance. Jack's eyes meet Sarah's, a complex message passing between them. Concern for her safety, but also recognition of what she is attempting. You shouldn't be here, he says aloud, the warning belied by the approval in his gaze. I think I'm exactly where I need to be, Sarah replies, wheeling further into the room. She holds up the medication case from Jack's box. Looking for these, Marcus? The refined Phoenix compounds? Marcus's expression sharpens with interest. So, Thompson shared his secrets with you. Interesting. He takes a step toward her. Those would be very useful to our research. Yes, I thought they might be, Sarah continues, positioning her wheelchair between Jack and the monitoring equipment. But before I consider sharing them, I'd like to understand exactly what you're hoping to achieve here. Scientific advancement, Marcus replies smoothly. The Phoenix Project was ahead of its time. Neural regeneration technologies that could revolutionize trauma care. Meridian simply wants to continue that important work. With unwilling test subjects, Sarah challenges, with corporate espionage and kidnapping. Marcus spreads his hands in a gesture of reasonableness. Captain Thompson's participation is a unique opportunity. His long-term adaptation to the protocols provides invaluable data we can't get anywhere else. He glances at Jack. As for the methods, well, conventional research channels weren't an option, given the classified nature of the original work. In my accident, Sarah presses, was that part of your unconventional methods too? A flicker of genuine regret crosses Marcus's face. An unfortunate miscalculation. The operation was meant to secure the prototype materials, not cause casualties. Your presence in that particular vehicle at that particular time was statistical bad luck. Statistical bad luck, Sarah repeats, the words hollow in the sterile laboratory. Is that what you tell yourselves to sleep at night? That the lives you destroy are just statistical anomalies? The older woman steps forward, studying Sarah with clinical interest. You must be Robert Mitchell's daughter. The scans were quite remarkable. Neural regeneration in a pattern consistent with hereditary Phoenix markers. She extends a manicured hand. Catherine Wells, CEO of Meridian Systems. Sarah ignores the offered hand. The same Meridian Systems that arranged my accident, that killed Rebecca Thompson. Catherine Wells withdraws her hand, unperturbed by the rejection. Regrettable incidents, both of them, the actions of overzealous operatives who have since been removed from our organization. Her voice carries the smooth assurance of someone accustomed to reshaping difficult truths. I assure you, Ms. Mitchell, our interest is purely scientific. Like your interest in my father 20 years ago? Jack interjects, his voice steady despite the electrodes monitoring his every response. Was it purely scientific when you pushed the protocols beyond safe parameters? When Jason started having seizures and you insisted on continuing anyway? A flash of something, pain, anger, perhaps both, crosses Catherine's composed features. My brother knew the risks. We all did. Your brother? Sarah asked, suddenly understanding the vague familiarity in Catherine's features. Jason Wells, Jack explains, never taking his eyes off Catherine. Subject 23, one of the 16 who didn't survive the protocols. He believed in the work, Catherine says, the polish momentarily cracking to reveal raw emotion beneath. In what Phoenix could achieve. His sacrifice wasn't in vain. It showed us the limitations, the boundaries we needed to respect. Boundaries you are now prepared to cross again, Jack observes. With improvements, Catherine counters, refinements based on 20 years of advancements in neuroscience, genetics, and biochemistry. She turns to Sarah. The compounds you're holding, Rebecca's work, I presume? She was brilliant, ahead of her time. Such a tragedy. Her accident. It wasn't an accident, Sarah says coldly, any more than mine was. Catherine meets her gaze without flinching. A regrettable necessity, perhaps, but think of what her work could mean, Miss Mitchell. Neural regeneration that actually works. Not just for the military elite, but for millions suffering from spinal cord injuries, degenerative nerve conditions, stroke damage. If it's so benevolent, Sarah challenges, why the armed guards? Why kidnap Jack instead of approaching Eagle's Nest openly? Politics, Catherine says, with a dismissive wave. Your father has considerable influence in Washington. The moment Meridian expressed interest in reviving Phoenix, he would have blocked us at every turn. Called in favors from the Pentagon, the FDA, wherever necessary. With good reason, Jack says. The protocols aren't ready. Even Rebecca's refined version carries risks you're not accounting for. That's where you're wrong, Captain Thompson, Marcus interjects, moving to a computer terminal. We've been monitoring your physiological responses for years. Remote surveillance during your treatment sessions at Eagle's Nest. Analysis of tissue samples collected during your routine medical examinations. He taps a key, bringing up a series of complex neural scans on a large wall display. We know more about how the protocols have altered your neural architecture than you do yourself. Sarah feels a chill at the revelation of how thoroughly Meridian had invaded Jack's life, had been watching and waiting for the right moment to strike. And what about the others, she asks. The Phoenix subjects who didn't adapt as successfully as Jack. Marcus hesitates, glancing at Catherine. You've met one, haven't you? Jack says, understanding dawning in his eyes. Major Collins, the old man with the tremor in his left side. Sarah remembers the quiet, withdrawn patience she had glimpsed occasionally around Eagle's Nest but never spoken to. He was a Phoenix subject? Subject 17, Catherine confirms, one of the earliest to receive the full protocol series. His physical recovery was remarkable. Complete restoration of motor function after a spinal injury that should have left him paralyzed, but the neural integration was imperfect. Imperfect, Jack repeats, his voice hardening. He hasn't spoken a complete sentence in 18 years, lives with constant neurological pain that no medication can touch, experiences flashbacks so vivid he can't distinguish them from reality. An unfortunate outcome, Catherine acknowledges, but one we've learned from. The protocols have been modified to prevent such complications. You can't know that, Jack insists, not without long-term studies, controlled trials, ethical oversight, all of which take time we don't have, Catherine retorts, her corporate polish giving way to genuine passion. Do you know how many people suffer spinal cord injuries every year? How many veterans return from combat with neurological damage that conventional medicine can't touch? While the scientific community debates ethics and procedures, real people are suffering. People like me, Sarah says quietly. Catherine turns to her, sensing a potential ally. Exactly. You understand what's at stake. Your father has been protecting you from the truth, that there's a treatment that could help you walk again, dance again. At what cost? Sarah asks. Ending up like Major Collins, or worse? The risk is minimal with your genetic profile, Marcus says, moving back to the monitoring equipment connected to Jack. The Thompson Protocol, that's what we call it internally, is specifically designed for subjects with inherited Phoenix markers, like you. Thompson Protocol, Jack says sharply. Rebecca's work? Based on her research, yes, Catherine confirms. She was close to a breakthrough before her accident. We've simply continued where she left off. After you killed her, Jack says, his voice deadly quiet. Catherine doesn't deny the accusation. As I said, overzealous operatives, a mistake I've personally ensured won't be repeated. Before the conversation can continue, the laboratory door bursts open. Robert Mitchell enters, flanked by Eagle's Nest security personnel in tactical gear. Dr. Blackwood follows, her usual composure replaced by cold fury. This facility is secure, Robert announces, his voice carrying the authority of decades of military and corporate command. Your Meridian colleagues outside have been detained. You have approximately 30 seconds to step away from my daughter and Captain Thompson before I authorize these men to remove you by whatever means necessary. The Meridian operatives by the door reach for their weapons, but freeze as Eagle's Nest security train rifles on them with practiced efficiency. This is a misunderstanding, but Marcus begins, his confident demeanor slipping slightly. Meridian Biotechnologies has legitimate interest in the research being conducted here. We were merely... Save it for the federal agents on their way, Robert cuts him off. Industrial espionage, kidnapping, assault on a secured facility. The charges should keep your lawyers busy for years. He turns to the security team. Take them to the holding area. Full restraints, continuous monitoring. As the Meridian operatives are led away, their protests falling on deaf ears, Sarah wheels herself to Jack's side. She begins removing the monitoring electrodes with gentle efficiency, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. That was reckless, Jack says quietly as she works, coming here alone. Not alone, Sarah corrects. Noah showed me the way. At Jack's alarmed expression, she adds quickly, he's safe in the storage room. He was very brave. The tension in Jack's shoulders eases slightly. Like someone else I know, he says, a hint of his usual wry humor returning. Did you read the journal? Sarah shakes her head. There wasn't time, but I read your letter. She finishes removing the last electrode, then hands him the medication case. Is this really what I think it is? A treatment based on the Phoenix protocols? Jack accepts the case, his expression growing serious. Rebecca's final work, a targeted neural stimulant designed to enhance natural regeneration in patients with specific genetic markers. Safer than the original protocols, but still experimental. He looks at her steadily. It might help you walk again. It might do nothing, or it might change you in ways we can't predict. Like it changed you, Sarah says softly. Yes. Jack doesn't elaborate, but the weight of that single word carries volumes of meaning. Robert approaches, his commanding presence softened by evident relief at finding his daughter safe. Sarah, are you all right? She nods, suddenly aware of how strange this scene would have appeared just days ago. Herself willingly in the midst of danger, Jack Thompson as ally rather than stranger, her father looking to her for confirmation rather than imposing his protection. I'm fine, Dad, she assures him. Better than fine, actually. I know what I want to do. Robert looks between her and Jack, understanding dawning in his eyes. The treatment? You want to try it? Yes, Sarah confirms. Not because I need to walk again to be whole, not because I can't accept life in this chair if that's my reality. She meets Jack's gaze, drawing strength from what she sees there. But because I want the chance to find out what I'm capable of. The same chance you gave those other Phoenix subjects when conventional medicine had given up on them. Dr. Blackwood steps forward. You understand the risks. The physical changes are just the beginning. The neural rewiring affects perception, emotional processing, possibly even personality. I understand, Sarah replies, but I've spent 8 months mourning who I was. I'm ready to discover who I might become. Catherine Wells, still present but now flanked by security, speaks up. A wise decision, Ms. Mitchell. Perhaps we could discuss a collaborative approach? Meridian has resources that could... You've done enough, Robert cuts her off. This isn't a negotiation. It should be, Catherine insists, her corporate poise reasserting itself even in defeat. Think about it, Robert. Combined resources, Meridian's pharmaceutical capabilities, Mitchell Defense's government connections, Eagle's Nest clinical expertise. We could bring this treatment to market within years rather than decades. Market? Jack says incredulously. You're still thinking about profit? I'm thinking about scale, Catherine corrects. About reaching the millions who could benefit. One rehabilitation center in the Virginia mountains can only help so many people. She has a point, Derby Blackwood says reluctantly. Our resources are limited. A corporate partner with the right oversight. The right oversight being the key phrase, Robert interjects. Meridian has demonstrated it can't be trusted with this technology. Then restructure the partnership, Catherine suggests. Joint oversight committee, transparent protocols, independent ethical review board, whatever safeguards you deem necessary. Her eyes move to Sarah. But don't let corporate rivalry deny others the chance you're about to give your daughter. A tense silence falls over the laboratory as the implications of her words sink in. Despite everything, Catherine's argument carries the weight of truth. The potential benefits of Rebecca's work extend far beyond one patient, one rehabilitation center. We can discuss partnership models after the FBI has completed their investigation, Robert finally says, his tone making it clear the conversation is over for now. In the meantime, Ms. Wells, you'll be a guest of Eagle's Nest until the federal authorities arrive. As Catherine is led away, Noah emerges cautiously from the storage room, his eyes scanning the laboratory until they find his father. With a cry of relief, he runs to Jack, who enfolds him in a fierce embrace. "You did good, buddy," Jack murmurs into his son's hair. "So good." "I knew you'd be okay," Noah says with the unshakable faith of childhood. "Sarah had a plan." Jack looks up, meeting Sarah's eyes over his son's head. Something passes between them. Understanding, gratitude, and something deeper that neither is ready to name. The decision made, events move with surprising speed. Blackwood begins preparations in a smaller, more modern laboratory adjacent to the main facility, explaining that Rebecca's protocol requires specialized equipment that hadn't existed during the original Phoenix era. "The procedure itself is less invasive than it appears," she explains, as technicians prepare a treatment bed with monitoring equipment. A series of micro-injections along the spine, followed by targeted electrical stimulation to activate the compounds. "Will it hurt?" Sarah asks, remembering Jack's tense expression when they had entered the basement treatment rooms. "You'll be under mild sedation," Dr. Blackwood assures her. "You'll feel pressure, perhaps some warmth along the injection sites, but no pain." As Sarah is being prepared for the procedure, changing into a medical gown, having monitoring sensors attached to key points on her body, Jack appears at her side, Noah's hand firmly in his. "Last chance to change your mind," he says quietly. "No one would think less of you." Sarah takes his hand, marveling at how natural the gesture feels after such a short acquaintance. "I'm sure," she replies, "but I would like to ask one thing of you." "Name it." "Be there when I wake up," she says simply. "You and Noah, so I know I'm not alone in whatever comes next." Jack's expression softens. "We'll be there," he promises, "for as long as you want us to be." The treatment itself is less dramatic than its potential consequences might suggest. A series of injections administered at precise points along Sarah's spine, followed by electrical stimulation so gentle she barely feels it beneath the mild sedation Dr. Blackwood has provided. Throughout, Jack remains nearby, occasionally consulting with the doctor in hushed technical language that speaks to his deeper understanding of the procedure than he had previously revealed. As the sedation deepens, Sarah finds her consciousness drifting, images flowing through her mind like water. Herself dancing across the Kennedy Center stage. Her father, young and strong in military uniform. Jack bending to meet Noah at eye level. And finally, a woman she somehow knows is Rebecca Thompson, playing a violin while surrounded by soft light. "Tell her it's time," Rebecca says in this dream vision, her voice melodic and warm. "Tell her to remember what it feels like." When Sarah wakes, the laboratory is quiet, the lights dim to a gentle glow. She lies on a recovery bed, monitoring equipment beeping softly beside her. As promised, Jack sits nearby, Noah asleep against his shoulder, a children's book open but abandoned on his lap. "Hey," she says, her voice rough from dryness. Jack looks up immediately, relief washing over his features. "Hey yourself," he replies carefully, shifting Noah to a more comfortable position without waking him. "How do you feel?" Sarah takes inventory of her body, surprised by the clarity of sensation. "Different," she finally says, "more connected somehow, like parts of me that were silent are whispering again." Jack nods as if this makes perfect sense. The initial neural pathways reestablishing. It'll get stronger over time if the treatment takes hold. "When will we know if it worked?" Sarah asks, attempting to sit up. "Easy," Jack cautions, moving to help her. The physical changes come gradually. First increased sensation, then small, involuntary movements, eventually voluntary control. His hands are gentle as he adjusts her pillows. "But we've already got the first good sign. Your autonomic responses below the injury level are more active than they were yesterday." Sarah absorbs this information, the scientific reality somehow less important than the subjective experience of feeling more present in her entire body than she had since the accident. "I had a dream," she says suddenly, "about Rebecca. She said to tell you it's time. and to remember what it feels like. Jack goes very still, his expression unreadable. She said that? Those exact words? Sarah nods, puzzled by his reaction. Is it significant? Those were the words she said to me after my own treatment, Jack explains quietly, when I was first learning to access the changes the protocols had created. He smiles slightly, shaking his head. Seems she's still guiding the work, even now. She must have been remarkable, Sarah says softly. She was. Jack's voice holds admiration without the sharp edge of grief she might have expected. And she would have liked you very much. Noah stirs against his father's shoulder, blinking awake with a child's immediate transition from sleep to full awareness. When he sees Sarah sitting up, his face breaks into a delighted smile. You're awake, he exclaims. Did it work? Can you dance again? Noah, Jack admonishes gently, remember what we discussed about patience? But Sarah doesn't mind the boy's directness. Not yet, she answers honestly. But I can feel more than before. It's a start. Noah nods, accepting this with a child's pragmatism. Dad says healing is a journey, not a destination. Your dad is very wise, Sarah replies, exchanging a smile with Jack over the boy's head. The door opens, admitting Robert and Dr. Blackwood. Her father looks exhausted but relieved, the burden of worry he had carried for months visibly lightened as he sees her awake and alert. The Meridian situation is contained, he reports. FBI agents arrived an hour ago. Wells and her team are in federal custody. He moves to Sarah's bedside, taking her hand in his. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Like myself, Sarah replies, but a different version than before. Doctor. Blackwood checks the monitoring equipment, nodding with satisfaction at the readings. The initial response is promising, she confirms. Better than I expected, honestly. Your genetic compatibility with the treatment is even stronger than our models predicted. What happens now? Sarah asks, looking between the doctor and Jack. Rehabilitation, Jack answers. But not the kind you've been through before. This will be about learning to work with the changes as they develop, training your body to recognize and strengthen the new neural pathways. It's a long road, Dr. Blackwood cautions. Months of work, possibly years before full recovery, if that's even possible. I'm not afraid of hard work, Sarah says, a hint of the dancer's discipline returning to her voice. And I'm not fixated on full recovery anymore. Whatever mobility I regain is a gift, not an entitlement. Jack smiles, recognizing his own philosophy in her words. One day at a time, he agrees, starting with getting you back to your cabin for some real rest. As arrangements are made to transfer her from the laboratory to her accommodations, Sarah finds herself watching the easy interaction between Jack and Noah, the way they communicate with minimal words, the absolute trust evident in every exchange. Something had shifted in her during these extraordinary days, not just the physical changes initiated by Rebecca's treatment, but a fundamental reorientation of how she saw herself and her future. Later, settled in her cabin with the night sounds of the mountains drifting through the open window, Sarah opens Rebecca's journal, the one Jack had given her for her own thoughts, and begins to write. Today, I chose to become someone new, not because I couldn't accept who I was, but because I glimpsed who I might become. The path forward isn't clear yet, but for the first time since the accident, I'm looking ahead rather than behind. Jack says healing isn't about fixing what's broken, but finding a new way forward. I think he's right. Whatever comes next, whether I dance again or find a different way to move through the world, I'm ready for the journey, and I'm not alone. As she writes these final words, Sarah becomes aware of a sensation she has not experienced in 8 months, a faint but unmistakable tingling in her toes, like distant music beginning to play. 3 weeks later, Sarah sits in the Eagle's Nest physical therapy room, facing a set of parallel bars. The morning light streams through large windows, illuminating dust motes that dance in the air like miniature performers. Jack stands beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. Remember, he says, we're not expecting miracles today, just the first step in a long process. Sarah nods, her heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and fear. The past 3 weeks have brought remarkable changes, increased sensation throughout her lower body, small involuntary movements, and finally yesterday the first controlled wiggle of her toes. But this, attempting to stand, To bear weight on legs that haven't supported her in nearly a year is different. I'm ready, she says, positioning her wheelchair at the start of the bars. Jack moves to one side while Dr. Blackwood takes position at the other. Noah sits cross-legged on a mat nearby, watching with intense concentration, his sketchbook open but forgotten on his lap. We'll support your weight, Dr. Blackwood explains. You just focus on sending the intention to your legs. Remember what we practiced with the visualization exercises. Sarah takes a deep breath, centering herself as Jack had taught her. She closes her eyes briefly, imagining the neural pathways lighting up, the connections strengthening with each attempt. When she opens her eyes, she nods once, resolute. With Jack and Dr. Blackwood supporting her arms, she pushes upward from the wheelchair. For a terrifying moment, nothing happens. Her legs remain limp, unresponsive. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, her muscles begin to engage. Trembling, uncertain, but definitely active. That's it, Jack encourages softly. Don't force it. Let it happen naturally. Sweat beads on Sarah's forehead as she concentrates, focusing on the sensation of her feet touching the floor. Gradually, her legs begin to take weight. Not much, perhaps 10% of what would be needed to stand independently, but it's a beginning. I'm standing, she whispers, tears welling in her eyes. Jack, I'm standing. You are, he confirms, his own voice thick with emotion. You absolutely are. From his place on the mat, Noah lets out a whoop of delight, breaking the reverent atmosphere. I knew it. I told you, Dad. Sarah laughs through her tears, the boy's unfiltered joy, the perfect counterpoint to the moment's gravity. She manages to hold the position for nearly a minute before her strength gives out. Jack and Dr. Blackwood easing her gently back into the wheelchair. That's enough for today, Dr. Blackwood says, checking Sarah's pulse. We don't want to overtax the new neural connections. It's a start, Sarah says, echoing her words to Noah from weeks earlier, but now filled with newfound certainty. A very promising start, Dr. Blackwood agrees. The rate of recovery is remarkable, even accounting for your genetic advantages. Rebecca's protocol is proving more effective than we dared hope. Later, as Jack wheels Sarah along a path beside the lake, Noah running ahead to scare up frogs along the shoreline, they discuss the future. Meridian's lawyers have proposed a research partnership, Jack informs her. Joint development of the Thompson Protocol with strict ethical guidelines and independent oversight. My father agreed to this, Sarah asks, surprised. Conditionally, Jack confirms. Robert's no fool. He recognizes that having Meridian as a partner is safer than having them as an enemy. Besides, Catherine Wells made a compelling point about scale. Eagle's Nest can only help so many people. Do you trust her? After everything? Jack considers the question seriously. Trust is a strong word, but I believe she's sincere about wanting to honor her brother's memory by making the protocols work safely. And with Robert and Dr. Blackwood on the oversight committee, along with representatives from the NIH and FDA, the safeguards are substantial. They pause at a wooden bench overlooking the water. Jack helps Sarah transfer from the wheelchair to the bench, his hands steady and sure. Noah has found a perfect skipping stone and is attempting to break his personal record, counting aloud with each bounce across the lake's surface. What about you? Sarah asks. Will you continue working here or join the research partnership? My place is here, Jack says without hesitation. In the trenches, so to speak, working directly with patients, not in a corporate lab. He glances at her. Though I might need to train some assistants if the referrals keep increasing at the current rate. Oh? Word has gotten out about your progress, Jack explains. Dr. Blackwood has received inquiries from doctors around the country, patients with similar injury profiles, potential genetic compatibility with the protocol. I could help, Sarah offers, surprising herself with how right it feels. Not as a doctor, obviously, but I understand the process from the patient's perspective, the psychological components, the visualization techniques. Jack studies her, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Rebecca said something similar once, that the most valuable insights often come from those who've experienced the treatment firsthand. I had another dream about her last night, Sarah admits. She was showing me how to listen to my body in a new way, how to feel the music even when I couldn't move to it. She hesitates. Is that strange, dreaming about someone I never met? The protocols create unusual connections, Jack says thoughtfully, not just within your own nervous system, but sometimes beyond. I can't explain it scientifically, but I've experienced it too. Insights that seem to come from elsewhere, especially during the integration phase. Bow, Noah calls, running back toward them. 7 skips. Did you see? 7. I saw, buddy, Jack confirms, pride evident in his voice. That's a new record. Noah beams, then turns to Sarah. I made something for you. He pulls a folded paper from his pocket and hands it to her with ceremonial gravity. Sarah unfolds it to find another drawing, but unlike his previous portraits, this one shows her standing between Jack and Noah, all three holding hands. In the background is a stylized rendition of Eagle's Nest, mountains rising behind it. It's us, Noah explains unnecessarily, for when you can walk with us to the big rock at the top of the hill. Dad says it has the best view in Virginia. Sarah feels tears threatening again. She, who had barely cried in the months after her accident, now finds emotions bubbling close to the surface at the smallest provocations. Another side effect of the protocol, Jack had explained, the rewiring of neural pathways affecting emotional processing as well as physical function. It's beautiful, Noah, she says, running her fingers over the careful lines. And you're right, we'll make that hike together, I promise. As Noah runs off again, distracted by a heron landing at the water's edge, Jack's hand finds Sarah's on the bench between them. Their fingers intertwine naturally, as if they'd been doing this for years rather than days. He's already planning our future adventures, Jack observes, a question in his voice. Is that okay? Sarah asks, suddenly uncertain. I know we're moving quickly, but time moves differently after trauma, Jack interrupts gently. Rebecca used to say that survival compresses experience, makes connections form faster, deeper. It's why soldiers become brothers in weeks rather than years. And what are we becoming? Sarah asks, finding courage in his steady gaze. Jack's answer is simple but profound. Whole again, each in our own way. From across the lake, Noah calls for them to watch another stone-skipping attempt. As they turn to look, Sarah feels it again, that whisper of movement in her legs, the promise of a future she had thought forever close to her. Whatever comes next, she is ready. Not as the dancer she was, but as the woman she is becoming, scarred but stronger, limited but alive with possibilities. And not alone. Never alone again. As she sits on the bench with Jack beside her, Noah's laughter echoing across the water, Sarah Mitchell smiles. The first steps of her new journey lie ahead, and for the first time since the accident, she is eager to discover where they might lead. That evening, a light rain patters against the roof of Sarah's cabin, creating a soothing rhythm that reminds her of music. She sits at the small desk by the window, Rebecca's journal open before her, writing by lamplight. The past 3 weeks have been filled with entries, documenting not just her physical progress, but the emotional and psychological changes that accompany her recovery. A knock at the door interrupts her thoughts. She closes the journal and wheels to the door, opening it to find Robert standing on the porch, rain glistening on his suit jacket. Dad, she says, surprised. I thought you were heading back to Alexandria tonight. Change of plans, he replies, stepping inside as she moves back to make room. The lawyers need more time to finalize the partnership agreement with Meridian. I'll fly out tomorrow instead. Sarah notices something different about her father, a subtle softening of his usually rigid posture, a lessening of the command presence he typically projects. You're looking well, Robert observes, taking the chair she indicates. Dr. Blackwood showed me the video from your session today. Standing, Sarah, actually standing. With help, she qualifies. But yes, it's progress. It's a miracle, Robert corrects, then catches himself. Or rather, it's science that looks like a miracle to those of us who don't fully understand it. Jack would say it's both, Sarah replies with a small smile. Science creating the conditions for the body's natural miracles to occur. Robert's expression grows thoughtful. You and Thompson have become close. It's not quite a question, but Sarah answers anyway. We have. He understands what I'm going through in a way no one else can. And Noah, she pauses, realizing how deeply the boy has worked his way into her heart in such a short time. Noah reminds me that joy is always possible, even after loss. Thompson is a good man, Robert acknowledges, the admission clearly difficult for him. Better than I gave him credit for 20 years ago. I was so focused on the failures of Phoenix, on the risks, that I couldn't see the potential. Is that why you opposed it so strongly? The risk? Robert sighs, looking suddenly older in the soft lamplight. Partly, but there was more to it. He hesitates, then continues. The protocols were changing the subjects in ways we couldn't predict or control, not just physically, but psychologically. Some developed unusual abilities, increased empathy, intuitive diagnostic skills, accelerated learning capacities. Like Jack, Sarah says. Thompson was the most dramatic example, yes, but there were others. In the military, certain factions within the Pentagon began to see Phoenix not just as a medical recovery program, but as a potential way to create enhanced soldiers. Super soldiers? Sarah asks incredulously. Like in science fiction? Nothing so dramatic, Robert clarifies, but improved, faster reflexes, higher pain tolerance, increased sensory awareness. The perfect special forces operative. And you objected to this? Vehemently. The protocols were intended to heal, not to create weapons. When I discovered the classified directive to shift Phoenix's focus, I used every bit of influence I had to shut it down. He looks down at his hands. I never told Thompson or the others the real reason. Let them believe it was about the risks, the side effects. It was easier that way. And now, Sarah asks, with Meridian wanting to commercialize Rebecca's version of the protocol? Now we have safeguards in place, independent oversight, transparency requirements. The Thompson protocol will be developed as a medical treatment, nothing more. Robert's eyes meet hers, unexpectedly vulnerable. I couldn't protect you from the accident, Sarah, but I can make damn sure that what comes from it benefits others without being perverted into something Rebecca never intended. The mention of Jack's late wife brings something to mind. I had a dream about her, Sarah admits, about Rebecca. It felt real somehow. Rather than dismissing her, Robert nods slowly. Thompson isn't the only one who reported unusual experiences after the protocols. Shared dreams, intuitive insights, what some might call psychic phenomena if they were inclined towards such terminology. You don't believe in that sort of thing, Sarah observes. I believe in what I can measure and verify, Robert agrees. But Phoenix taught me that the boundaries of what can be measured are constantly expanding. He pauses. The human brain remains largely mysterious, Sarah. The connections it forms, the ways it processes information. We've barely scratched the surface. They sit in companionable silence for a moment, the rain providing a gentle background rhythm. It strikes Sarah how different this feels from their interactions before Eagle's Nest, the tension gone, replaced by a new understanding. I've made arrangements to transfer your things from Alexandria, Robert says eventually. Dr. Blackwood has approved converting one of the larger cabins for long-term residents. You'll have space for a piano if you'd like. A piano? Sarah is surprised by the suggestion. Thompson mentioned music therapy might be beneficial, and you used to play before ballet became your focus. He smiles slightly. Your mother would be pleased to know you're returning to it. The mention of her mother, who had died when Sarah was 12, is unexpected. Robert rarely speaks of his late wife. She would have liked Jack, Sarah says with sudden certainty. Yes, Robert agrees, after a moment's consideration. I believe she would have. He rises, straightening his jacket. I should let you rest. Big day tomorrow, Dr. Blackwood mentioned starting aquatic therapy. Yes, in the indoor pool, less resistance, better support for early mobility work. Robert nods, then hesitates at the door. I'm proud of you, Sarah, not just for the physical progress, but for who you're becoming through all this. You have your mother's strength. The words, so simple yet so profound coming from her usually reserved father, leave Sarah momentarily speechless. By the time she finds her voice, he has already stepped out into the rain with a final nod goodnight. Alone again, Sarah returns to her journal, adding a new entry about her conversation with Robert. As she writes, she becomes aware once more of the tingling sensation in her legs. Stronger now, almost like the vibration of a bass note through her body. On impulse, she closes the journal and wheels to the small, digital keyboard Dr. Blackwood had provided as part of her therapy. Positioning herself before it, Sarah places her fingers on the keys and begins to play. tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as muscle memory returns. It's a simple piece, one of the first she had learned as a child, but the act of creating music after so long feels profoundly significant. As her fingers move across the keys, Sarah closes her eyes, allowing the sensation to flow through her entire body. And there, just at the edge of perception, she feels a new presence, warm, encouraging, gently guiding her toward unfamiliar harmonies. Whether it's Rebecca's influence, a side effect of the protocol, or simply her own creativity reawakening, Sarah doesn't try to analyze. She simply plays, losing herself in the moment. Outside her cabin, unnoticed in the rain, Jack stands listening, Noah asleep in his arms. The boy had insisted on bringing Sarah a get-well card before bed, but hearing the music, Jack had stopped, unwilling to interrupt what he recognizes as a healing moment. As the melody winds to a close, he turns and walks back toward their cabin, a smile playing at his lips. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new progress, new connections forming. But for tonight, this moment of beauty emerging from struggle is enough. The rain continues to fall, washing the world clean, preparing it for whatever comes next. In her cabin, Sarah's fingers find the final chord, lingering on the keys as the sound fades into silence. She opens her eyes, feeling changed in some subtle but fundamental way. "Thank you," she whispers to the empty room, knowing somehow that she is heard. Later that night, Sarah dreams of dancing, not on a stage before an audience, but on a mountain clearing under open sky. In the dream, her legs move freely, supporting her weight without effort. Jack and Noah watch from nearby, applauding her improvised performance. And at the edge of the clearing stands a dark-haired woman with a violin, playing a melody that seems to arise from the mountains themselves. When Sarah wakes just before dawn, the dream remains vivid in her mind. More than that, she can still feel the music in her body, the rhythm pulsing through pathways that had been silent for too long. With careful movements, she transfers from bed to wheelchair and positions herself at the center of the cabin's main room. The space is small but adequate for what she intends. Taking a deep breath, Sarah closes her eyes and imagines the dream music once more. Slowly, deliberately, she raises her arms in the first position, muscle memory guiding her through the familiar gesture. Then, gripping the arms of her wheelchair, she pushes upward. For a breathless moment, she hovers between sitting and standing, her legs trembling with the effort. Then, miracle of science or sheer determination, she rises, unsteady, precarious, but upright, unsupported. She manages to hold the position for only seconds before sinking back into the chair, her heart racing, sweat beading on her forehead. But those seconds contain an eternity of possibility. "One step at a time," she whispers to herself, echoing Jack's constant refrain. But for the first time, she truly believes it. As the sun begins to rise over the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the world in shades of promise, Sarah Mitchell opens Rebecca's journal and records her private victory. Whatever the future holds, whatever challenges the Thompson Protocol may yet present, whatever path her relationship with Jack and Noah might take, this moment belongs to her alone. The journey from brokenness to wholeness is never complete, never perfect. But in the quiet dawn light of Eagle's Nest, it has beautifully, irrevocably begun. 6 months after beginning the Thompson Protocol, Sarah stands at the bar in the newly constructed dance studio at Eagle's Nest. Morning light streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the polished wooden floor and casting her shadow in elongated form against the wall of mirrors. Her movements are deliberate, measured, nothing like the fluid grace that once defined her performances at the Kennedy Center. But she is standing, supporting her own weight, executing simplified versions of the ballet positions that were once as natural to her as breathing. "Good," Jack says from where he observes near the door. "Your alignment is improving." Sarah meets his eyes in the mirror, a smile playing at her lips. "You sound like Madame Kozlova, my first ballet instructor." Except she would have wrapped my ankles with her cane and told me my turnout was lazy. "Fortunately, my teaching methods are less medieval," Jack replies with a grin. Though Noah has suggested I carry a stick to look more official. As if summoned by his name, Noah bursts through the studio door, his school backpack still slung over one shoulder. At 8.5, he seems to have grown an inch in the past months, though his gap-toothed smile remains the same. "Sarah, Dad, look what I made in science class." He drops his backpack and produces a model of the human spine, carefully constructed from clay and pipe cleaners. Mrs. Chambers said it was the best one. I showed everyone how the nerves connect to the muscles and how Dad's medicine helps make new pathways. Sarah releases the bearer and turns carefully, maintaining her balance with practiced concentration. 6 months ago, this simple movement would have been impossible. Now it's merely challenging. It's fantastic, Noah, she says, lowering herself to better examine his creation. You've even got the vertebrae shaped correctly. Noah beams at the praise. I used your MRI pictures as reference, the ones Dr. Blackwood showed me on the computer. Jack raises an eyebrow. Dr. Blackwood has been giving you medical lessons? Only on Tuesdays after school, Noah explains matter-of-factly. She says I have a natural aptitude for neuroscience. At 8 years old, Sarah laughs. 8.5, Noah corrects seriously, and Dad was already doing field medicine when he was 12. That was different circumstances, Jack says, ruffling his son's hair. War tends to accelerate education in unfortunate ways. A comfortable silence falls, broken only by the distant sound of a helicopter approaching. Jack cocks his head, listening. That'll be Robert, he says. Right on schedule. Sarah nods, reaching for the walking cane propped against the bar. Her father's weekly visits have become a fixture of life at Eagle's Nest, his corporate jet making the journey from Alexandria every Friday afternoon, weather permitting. I should change before he arrives, she says, making her way slowly but steadily toward the door. Each step is deliberate, a conscious effort of will translated into physical movement through pathways that continue to strengthen with use. I'll walk with you, Noah volunteers, falling into step beside her. He's learned to match his pace to hers, offering his presence without making her feel dependent. It's a sensitivity beyond his years, one that Sarah has come to treasure. Jack watches them go, the boy chattering about his science project, Sarah listening with genuine interest. When they're out of sight, he turns back to the studio, surveying the space that had been Robert Mitchell's latest contribution to his daughter's recovery. The renovation had taken only weeks. Mitchell Defense's resources ensuring that no expense was spared, no detail overlooked. The studio is professional grade, sprung floors, perfect acoustics, temperature control systems that would be the envy of major dance companies. Yet it's the personal touches that make the space special. Photographs of Sarah in performance, carefully selected to inspire rather than intimidate. A small bench where Noah often sits to draw while Sarah practices. The vintage record player that Jack had found at an antique store in town, along with a collection of vinyl ballet classics. The sound of footsteps in the corridor pulls Jack from his reverie. He turns to find Dr. Blackwood in the doorway, tablet in hand, her expression a mixture of excitement and professional caution. The latest results from Chicago just came in, she says without preamble. Patient 4 is showing the same accelerated neural regeneration pattern as Sarah. 6 weeks into the protocol and already demonstrating voluntary movement in previously paralyzed extremities. Jack nods, absorbing the information. Patient 4, Alexandra Kim, 31, former gymnast, spinal cord injury from a training accident 3 years ago. One of the first candidates approved for the expanded clinical trial of the Thompson protocol. And the side effects, he asks, the question that is never far from his mind. Consistent with what we've observed here, Dr. Blackwood reports. Increased sensory perception, particularly to sound and touch. Vivid dreams. Occasional episodes of what she describes as emotional amplification, feelings more intense than before the treatment. Manageable then, Jack concludes. No signs of the more severe reactions from the original Phoenix cohort? None, Dr. Blackwood confirms. Rebecca's refinements to the compound, combined with your insights on the administration protocol, appear to have effectively eliminated the risk of neurological instability we saw in cases like Collins. The mention of Major Collins brings a momentary shadow to Jack's expression. The older man had been transferred to a specialized care facility in Maryland 3 months earlier, his condition unchanging despite the best efforts of the Eagle's Nest team. We couldn't help everyone, Dr. Blackwood says softly, reading his thoughts. But because of you and Sarah, dozens who would have remained paralyzed now have a chance at recovery. That counts for something, Jack. Before he can respond, the distinctive sound of Robert Mitchell's voice echoes down the hallway, accompanied by another male voice Jack doesn't immediately recognize. Shall we? Dr. Blackwood gestures toward the door, already moving to greet their visitors. Robert Mitchell stands in the main lobby of Eagle's Nest, deep in conversation with a man in an impeccable suit who Jack recognizes after a moment as Senator James Harrington, chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Jack, Robert acknowledges with a nod as they approach. Eleanor, allow me to introduce Senator Harrington. The senator has been instrumental in securing the regulatory approvals for the expanded clinical trials. Dr. Thompson, the senator extends his hand, an honor to meet you. Your work with the Thompson Protocol is causing quite a stir in Washington. Jack shakes the offered hand, careful to keep his expression neutral. The protocol is named after my late wife, Senator. Her research is the foundation of our current success. Of course, Harrington nods, seemingly unperturbed by the correction. Dr. Rebecca Thompson's contributions have been well documented in the briefings. Brilliant work, particularly considering the limited resources available to her at the time. The senator has been following our progress closely, Robert explains, as part of the oversight committee established in our agreement with Meridian Systems. Jack raises an eyebrow. I wasn't aware the military had a seat on that committee. Not officially, Harrington says smoothly, but given the historical connection between Phoenix and the Department of Defense, certain interests need to be represented to ensure, shall we say, appropriate development pathways. Before Jack can respond, Sarah appears from the residential wing, Noah still at her side. She walks with the aid of her cane, her movements measured but steady. Seeing her father, she smiles. Dad, she greets him warmly. You're early. Robert moves to embrace his daughter, his usual reserve softening as it always does in her presence. Tailwinds, he explains, and the senator was eager to see Eagle's Nest firsthand. Sarah turns her attention to Harrington, her expression politely curious. Senator, welcome to our little mountain retreat. Ms. Mitchell, Harrington inclines his head respectfully. Your progress is remarkable. The videos don't do justice to seeing you in person. Videos? Sarah questions, glancing at her father. Documentation for the FDA approval process, Robert explains quickly. Standard procedure for experimental treatments. The senator is here to discuss the next phase of the clinical trials. Dr. Blackwood interjects smoothly. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in the conference room. I've prepared a presentation on our latest results. Excellent idea, Harrington agrees. I'm particularly interested in the data on neural pathway formation rates across different patient demographics. As the adults turn toward the administrative wing, Noah tugs at Jack's sleeve. Dad, he whispers, loudly enough for Sarah to hear. I don't like him. He smells like the men who took you. Jack places a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. It's all right, buddy. The senator is here to help more people get the medicine that's helping Sarah. Noah remains unconvinced, his expression skeptical beyond his years. That's what he says, but his eyes don't match his words. Sarah exchanges a glance with Jack, both recognizing the perceptiveness that has become one of Noah's defining traits. Since the incident with Meridian, the boy's intuitive understanding of people has sharpened, as if he's developed a sixth sense for deception. Why don't you show Noah the new books that arrived in the library, Jack suggests to Sarah. The senator's presentation will mostly be statistical analysis, not exactly entertaining for either of you. Sarah recognizes the strategic move for what it is, an opportunity to keep Noah away from Harrington while also giving her a chance to observe the senator's interaction with the others from a distance. Good idea, she agrees. Noah, I heard they got that series about the kid detective you were asking about. Noah brightens immediately. The Moonlight Mysteries? All 6 books? We'll have to go see, Sarah says, offering her free hand to the boy. Dad and Dr. Blackwood can fill us in later. As they move away, Jack turns to follow Robert, Dr. Blackwood, and the senator toward the conference room, his mind already formulating the questions he needs answered about this unexpected development. The conference room at Eagle's Nest, like much of the facility, balances rustic charm with cutting-edge technology. A large oak table dominates the space, surrounded by comfortable chairs, while state-of-the-art presentation equipment is discreetly integrated into the wooden walls. Dr. Blackwood pulls up a series of brain scans on the large display, highlighting areas of neural activity in patients before and after treatment with the Thompson protocol. As you can see, Senator, she explains, The pattern of regeneration follows a consistent trajectory across all successfully treated patients. Initial activity begins here. She indicates a specific region of the brainstem, then extends outward along damaged neural pathways, essentially creating a scaffold for new connections to form. Fascinating, Harrington murmurs, studying the images with evident interest. And the timeline from initial treatment to functional recovery? Variable, Jack interjects, dependent on factors including the patient's genetic compatibility with the protocol, extent of original damage, time since injury, and psychological readiness for recovery. In Sarah's case, Robert adds, first voluntary movement was observed within 3 weeks. Others in the trial have taken longer, 8 to 12 weeks being the current average. And the success rate, Harrington presses, what percentage of patients show meaningful recovery? Dr. Blackwood hesitates briefly. Of the 26 patients currently enrolled in the trial, 21 are showing significant neural regeneration. Of those, 18 have regained some degree of voluntary movement below their injury site. Approximately 70% functional success rate then, Harrington calculates. Impressive for any medical intervention, let alone one targeting conditions previously considered permanent. The key is patient selection, Jack emphasizes. We're currently limiting the trial to those with genetic markers similar to the original Phoenix responders. Without those markers, the protocol is unlikely to be effective and carries increased risk of adverse reactions. Yes, the genetic component, Harrington nods thoughtfully. That's where I believe we have an opportunity for significant advancement. Jack exchanges a glance with Robert, whose expression has grown guarded. What kind of advancement, Senator? Robert asks carefully. Harrington leans forward, his manner shifting from polite interest to focused intensity. Genetic modification to increase protocol compatibility. Preliminary research at Walter Reed suggests that CRISPR techniques could potentially alter key markers to match those of responsive patients. You want to genetically modify patients to make them compatible with the protocol? Jack asks, unable to keep the edge from his voice. I want to make this remarkable treatment available to everyone who needs it, Harrington counters smoothly. Not just the genetically fortunate. At significantly increased risk, Dr. Blackwood points out, the original Phoenix protocols demonstrated the dangers of forcing compatibility where it doesn't naturally exist. With all due respect, Doctor, medical science has advanced considerably in the decades since Phoenix, Harrington says. What was dangerous then may be entirely manageable now, with proper precautions and monitoring. This wasn't part of our agreement with Meridian, Robert says flatly. The Oversight Committee approved trials only for naturally compatible candidates. Circumstances evolve, Mr. Mitchell, Harrington replies. The potential applications of the Thompson Protocol extend far beyond a limited pool of genetically suitable spinal injury patients. What applications did you have in mind, Senator? Jack asks, though he suspects he already knows the answer. Harrington meets his gaze directly. Military applications, Dr. Thompson, as was intended from the beginning of Project Phoenix. A tense silence falls over the room. Robert's expression hardens into the mask of corporate authority Sarah had once described as granite and steel. Dr. Blackwood's fingers tighten imperceptibly on her tablet. Phoenix was about healing wounded soldiers, Jack says finally, his voice dangerously quiet. Not creating enhanced ones. A distinction without a difference. Harrington dismisses the objection with a wave of his hand. A soldier who can recover from catastrophic injury in weeks rather than months, or not at all, is by definition enhanced. The Thompson Protocol simply takes that concept to its logical conclusion. By experimenting on healthy soldiers, Robert challenges, modifying their genetics without guaranteed benefit, by offering volunteers the opportunity to serve their country with unprecedented effectiveness, Harrington corrects, with full informed consent, of course. Like the informed consent given to the original Phoenix subjects, Jack's voice has grown cold. 16 of whom died as a result of the protocols? Regrettable losses in pursuit of necessary advancement, Harrington acknowledges without apparent remorse. But the refined Thompson Protocol, combined with targeted genetic modification, presents minimal risk compared to the potential strategic advantages. The answer is no, Robert states unequivocally. The licensing agreement with Meridian specifically prohibits military applications without unanimous approval from the Oversight Committee. As chairman of that committee, I can assure you such approval will not be forthcoming. Harrington's pleasant demeanor slips, revealing a harder edge beneath. Mr. Mitchell, I don't think you appreciate the national security implications at stake. China and Russia are already pursuing similar regenerative technologies. We cannot afford to fall behind in this crucial area of development. Actually, Senator, a new voice enters the conversation from the doorway. I think it's you who doesn't appreciate the implications of what you are proposing. Sarah stands in the entrance, leaning on her cane, her expression a mixture of determination and controlled anger. Behind her, Noah peeks around the doorframe, his young face solemn. Ms. Mitchell, Harrington recovers quickly, his politician's smile returning. I was just discussing with your father and Dr. Thompson the exciting possibilities for expanding access to your treatment. I heard, Sarah says simply, these walls aren't as thick as they look. She moves into the room with measured steps, each one a testament to months of grueling rehabilitation. The Thompson Protocol isn't a weapon, Senator. It's a second chance for people who thought they'd lost everything. No one is suggesting weaponizing the protocol, Harrington attempts to placate her, merely exploring its full potential for serving our country's defenders. By changing their genetic makeup to force compatibility, Sarah counters, creating the same conditions that led to disasters like Major Collins, a man who hasn't spoken a coherent sentence in 20 years because of what Phoenix did to his brain. Calculated risks are easy to calculate when you're not the one taking them, Sarah interrupts, her voice sharp. I've experienced the protocol firsthand, Senator. The changes aren't just physical. They affect how you think, how you feel, how you perceive the world around you. She gestures to Noah, who has edged into the room to stand beside Jack. Ask Noah about the dreams I have, dreams so vivid they blur the line between sleep and waking. Ask my father about the episodes of sensory overload that can leave me incapacitated for hours. Side effects that diminish with time, Dr. Blackwood interjects gently, and that are manageable with proper support and training. For naturally compatible patients, Sarah emphasizes, what happens to soldiers whose genetics have been artificially altered to force compatibility? When the changes go beyond physical recovery to affect their minds, their emotions, their very sense of self, who helps them manage then? Harrington's expression hardens. These concerns, while understandable, do not outweigh the strategic necessity. The necessity of having soldiers who can get back into combat sooner, Jack challenges, or soldiers with enhanced capabilities beyond normal human parameters. A telling silence follows the question, confirming Jack's suspicion. Both, I imagine, Robert says into the quiet, his voice coldly analytical. Rapid recovery from battlefield injuries, plus enhanced neural function, potentially including the same sensory abilities Jack developed, faster reflexes, heightened perception, possibly even the empathic capabilities that make the Thompson Protocol effective as a treatment methodology. The perfect special forces operative, Jack concludes, echoing Robert's words from months earlier, just as certain factions in the Pentagon wanted 20 years ago. Harrington straightens in his chair, abandoning pretense. The world has changed, Thompson. Threats have evolved. Conventional military advantages are eroding. We need every edge we can develop, especially ones that our adversaries cannot easily replicate. Not this edge, Sarah says firmly, not through Eagle's Nest, not through the Thompson Protocol. I'm afraid that decision isn't entirely yours to make, Ms. Mitchell, Harrington replies, his tone now openly confrontational. The fundamental research underlying the protocol was developed with Department of Defense funding. The government maintains certain rights to applications deriving from that initial investment. That might be true of the original Phoenix research, Robert acknowledges, but not of Rebecca Thompson's subsequent work, which was privately funded and independently developed. A distinction that would be interesting to litigate, Harrington says with a thin smile, though I suspect the process would temporarily suspend all ongoing trials while ownership is determined. A shame for the patients currently waiting for treatment. The implied threat hangs in the air, its meaning clear to everyone present. A legal battle would halt the clinical trials, potentially for years, while patients who might have benefited from the Thompson Protocol remain paralyzed. You would hold healing hostage to get your enhanced soldiers, Jack says, the contempt evident in his voice. I would ensure that a groundbreaking medical advancement serves the greater good in all possible ways, Harrington corrects smoothly, including, but not limited to, its military applications. Noah, who has been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly speaks up. You're lying, he says simply. You don't care about helping people. You just want to make soldiers like the ones in your video games. Harrington glances at the boy with poorly concealed irritation. Young man, this is a complex adult discussion about using my mom's medicine to make super soldiers, Noah interrupts, his young voice steady. She wouldn't want that. She made it to help people heal, not to make them into weapons. Noah, Jack places a hand on his son's shoulder, but there's pride in his eyes. The boy has a point, Senator, Robert says, his expression thoughtful. Rebecca Thompson's intentions for her work are well documented, as are the ethical guidelines she established for its application. Intentions and guidelines that would carry significant weight in any legal proceeding, Dr. Blackwood adds, particularly when combined with the extensive documentation of her independent research after leaving the Phoenix Project. Harrington looks between them, reassessing the situation. You seem prepared for this conversation. We've been expecting it since the first successful results with Sarah, Robert confirms. The military's interest in neural enhancement technologies has been consistent for decades. We would have been naive not to anticipate your approach. Then you're also aware that I have other options, Harrington says, his pleasant mask falling away completely. Meridian Systems' research division, for instance, might be more receptive to exploration of military applications, especially with the right incentives. Meridian is bound by the same licensing agreement as Eagle's Nest, Robert reminds him. Any military application requires unanimous committee approval. Committees can be restructured, Harrington says dismissively, especially when national security concerns are invoked. The president has considerable authority in such matters. Perhaps, Sarah interjects, but any modified version of the protocol developed without Eagle's Nest participation would lack a crucial component. And what component is that, Ms. Mitchell? Harrington asks with evident skepticism. Jack, she says simply, his unique understanding of the neurological changes induced by the protocol, his ability to guide patients through the integration process, his insights that made Rebecca's theoretical work practical in clinical application. Dr. Thompson's contributions are documented in the research. Harrington dismisses the concern. Other neurologists can implement the procedures. They can administer the compound, Jack corrects. They can follow the technical protocols for electrical stimulation. What they can't do is what I do. Sense where neural pathways are forming incorrectly, guide patients through the psychological integration of new sensory information, help them navigate the dreams, the emotional amplification, the moments when their perception of reality itself seems to shift. Because those capabilities came from your exposure to the original Phoenix protocols, Harrington concludes, his interest visibly sharpening. Capabilities that could potentially be replicated in specially selected soldiers through the refined Thompson protocol. No, Jack says firmly, because those capabilities developed over 20 years of working with my own altered neurology. Of learning to use abilities I never asked for, never wanted, but had to master to survive. You can't shortcut that process, Senator. Not without risking the same kind of neurological instability that destroyed Collins and 15 others. A moment of silence follows as Harrington weighs this information, visibly recalculating his approach. A compromise, then, he finally offers. A parallel research track, strictly limited to volunteer subjects with prior military experience and natural genetic compatibility. No genetic modification, no application to active duty personnel without extensive long-term studies. With full ethical oversight, Robert stipulates, independent monitoring, complete transparency in results reporting. Within reasonable security parameters, Harrington qualifies, and no interference with the civilian medical applications, Sarah adds firmly. The current trials continue exactly as planned, with priority given to patients who need the treatment for recovery from actual injuries. Harrington considers the conditions. Acceptable provided the military research track receives equal access to Dr. Thompson's expertise. I have patients who need me, Jack says, reluctance evident in his voice. I can't divide my time between civilian and military applications. Then train others, Harrington suggests. Share your techniques, your approach. Develop a methodology that others can follow, even if they lack your unique abilities. Jack exchanges glances with Sarah, a silent communication passing between them. After a moment, she nods slightly. I'll train a team, Jack agrees cautiously, but I select the candidates, and I maintain final authority over treatment protocols for all patients, military or civilian. Reasonable terms, Harrington concedes, though the Department of Defense will require certain oversight provisions, which will be negotiated through proper channels with appropriate legal representation. Robert interjects, "Sure, not ad hoc in this meeting." Of course, Harrington smiles thinly. I wouldn't expect anything less from Mitchell Defense's legendary CEO. He rises from his chair, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced smoothness. I believe we have the outline of a workable arrangement. My staff will be in touch to formalize the details. As the senator moves toward the door, he pauses beside Sarah. Your recovery is truly remarkable, Ms. Mitchell, a testament to both the efficacy of the treatment and your own determination. Thank you, Senator, Sarah replies with polite neutrality. I hope whoever receives the treatment in your program has the same support system I've been fortunate enough to have. She glances meaningfully at Jack and Noah, then back to Harrington. It makes all the difference between merely surviving the protocol and truly thriving with it. I'll take that under advisement, Harrington says, his tone suggesting the comment has landed more deeply than he might care to admit. With a final nod to the room, he exits, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. When he's gone, the tension in the room visibly dissipates. Noah immediately moves to Sarah's side, leaning against her as if to offer support. Well, Robert says into the silence, that was inevitable, I suppose. But not ideal, Dr. Blackwood observes, setting down her tablet with a sigh. Military involvement always complicates medical research, especially with technologies as potentially transformative as the Thompson Protocol. We've contained the situation as well as could be expected, Robert replies pragmatically. Better to have Harrington working within our established parameters than attempting an end run around the licensing agreement. You think he'll honor the compromise? Jack asks skeptically. Not willingly, Robert acknowledges, but he's smart enough to recognize that a public legal battle over Rebecca's research would attract exactly the kind of scrutiny the military wants to avoid, especially given the history of the original Phoenix Project. Sarah moves to the conference table and lowers herself carefully into a chair, the confrontation having taxed her still recovering strength. So we proceed as planned with the civilian trials, the expanded patient group next month? Absolutely, Dr. Blackwood confirms. 30 new patients, all with confirmed genetic compatibility, all with injuries similar to yours. If the success rate holds, we'll have compelling evidence for FDA approval of the protocol as a standard treatment option within 18 months. And in the meantime, I start training others in the integration techniques, Jack adds, his expression thoughtful, creating a methodology that doesn't rely solely on my Phoenix-enhanced abilities. You've already started, Sarah points out with a small smile. With me. Jack looks at her questioningly. I can feel it, she explains, tapping her temple. The changes in perception, the way sensory input shifts. Not as strongly as you describe your experience, but enough to understand what patients are going through. Enough to guide them through the process, maybe. The student becomes the teacher, Robert observes with unexpected warmth. It makes sense, Dr. Blackwood nods, her scientific mind already exploring the possibility. The Thompson Protocol creates neural pathways similar to those Jack developed through the original Phoenix protocols. Not identical, but similar enough that some of the same perceptual abilities might emerge, especially in patients with strong genetic compatibility. Like Sarah, Noah pipes up, still leaning against her chair. Because Grandpa was in Phoenix too. Exactly, Dr. Blackwood confirms, smiling at the boy's quick understanding. Sarah's inherited markers give her a stronger foundation for developing the enhanced neural connections than most patients. Which means, Jack says slowly, the implications dawning, that we could potentially train a team of protocol recipients to become integration specialists themselves, creating a self-perpetuating system of treatment and support. Exactly what Rebecca would have wanted, Sarah says softly. Medicine that heals itself forward, reaching more people with each successful treatment. Robert checks his watch, his expression returning to its more characteristic business-like efficiency. I need to make some calls before this reaches Pentagon channels. Eleanor, would you mind accompanying me to your office? There are some technical details I want to clarify before speaking with our legal team. Dr. Blackwood nods, gathering her tablet. Of course. Noah, would you like to help me feed the fish in the aquarium afterward? The new tropical species arrived yesterday. Can I? Noah looks to Jack for permission, his earlier solemnity dissolving into childish enthusiasm. Go ahead, Jack smiles. Just don't let Dr. Blackwood talk you into becoming a marine biologist on top of a neuroscientist. Too many sciences, Noah agrees seriously, following the adults from the room. Left alone, Sarah and Jack sit in companionable silence for a moment, processing the confrontation and its resolution. Do you think it will work? Sarah finally asks. Training others to do what you do? Jack considers the question carefully. Not exactly what I do, he answers truthfully. The Phoenix protocols changed me in ways that can't be fully replicated. But the essence of it, the ability to guide patients through the neurological and psychological integration process, yes, I think that can be taught. Starting with me, Sarah says, not quite a question. If that's what you want, Jack replies, studying her face. You've already come further with the protocol than any other patient. Your understanding of the process is unique. Because I was a dancer, Sarah muses. Used to thinking about my body in relation to space, to movement, to expression. She pauses, a smile touching her lips. And because I had a good teacher. The best, Jack agrees with mock solemnity, earning a laugh from Sarah. Seriously, though, she continues, her expression growing thoughtful. I think I could help others through this process, especially those with similar backgrounds, dancers, athletes, anyone who's built their identity around physical capability and then lost it. It would mean staying at Eagle's Nest, Jack points out, making this place your home, not just your treatment center. I think it already is my home, Sarah says simply. Has been for some time now. The words hang between them, heavy with implication. Their relationship has evolved over the months, from therapist and patient to colleagues to friends, and gradually to something deeper that neither has fully defined. Noah would be pleased, Jack says after a moment. He's already rearranged his room 3 times to make space for your books. Has he now? Sarah raises an eyebrow, amused. And what about his father? Would he be pleased too? Jack meets her gaze directly, his usual reserve softening. His father has been waiting for the right moment to ask a question he's been considering for some time, which is, whether you might consider making your place in our lives more permanent. The words come carefully, weighted with significance. Not just as a colleague or friend, but as someone who might share in building whatever comes next. For Eagle's Nest, for the Thompson Protocol, for Noah. He pauses. For us. Sarah reaches across the table, taking his hand in hers. I've been waiting for that question, she admits. Ever since the day you handed me Rebecca's journal and trusted me with your story. With your heart. And your answer? Jack asks, his voice soft. Yes, Sarah says simply. To all of it. To whatever comes next. Whatever we build together. Outside the conference room window, spring sunshine bathes the Blue Ridge Mountains in golden light. In the distance, a hawk circles lazily on thermal currents, free and powerful in its element. Sarah watches it for a moment, feeling a kinship with its journey, the fall, the struggle, the return to flight along a different path than before. 6 months ago, she had arrived at Eagle's Nest broken in body and spirit, convinced that her life as she knew it had ended on a rain-slicked highway. Now she sits with a man who has shown her that endings can become beginnings, that what is lost can be transformed rather than merely mourned. Her legs still ache with the effort of her morning's practice. Her path to full recovery remains long and uncertain. But as Jack's hand tightens around hers, Sarah Mitchell feels something she had thought forever beyond her reach. Not just hope, but certainty. The certainty that whatever challenges lie ahead, she will face them standing. And she will not stand alone. So, she says, a smile breaking across her face like sunrise, when do we tell Noah that his room rearranging wasn't entirely premature? Jack laughs, the sound echoing in the quiet room. Tonight, over dinner, I was thinking we could drive into town, make it a proper celebration. I have a better idea, Sarah counters. Let's pack a picnic and hike to that rock he's always talking about, the one with the best view in Virginia. That's nearly a mile up a fairly steep trail, Jack points out, concerned. You've been making remarkable progress, but nothing, Sarah interrupts gently. I've been practicing on the treadmill when you're not looking. Besides, I'll have the two best hiking companions anyone could ask for. She squeezes his hand. And if I need to rest along the way, that's what rests are for. Jack studies her face, seeing the determination that has carried her through months of grueling rehabilitation, the spirit that refused to accept limitation as destiny. After a moment, he nods. Noah will be ecstatic, he says. He's had a picnic menu planned for this occasion since January. Of course he has, Sarah laughs. That boy never does anything halfway. Like someone else I know, Jack observes with a smile. They sit together a moment longer, hands entwined, sharing the quiet certainty of a future unfolding before them. Not the future either had imagined, but perhaps one better than they could have planned. A future built on healing, on transformation, on the phoenix-like ability to rise from ashes changed but undefeated. Outside, the hawk wheels once more and then soars higher, catching an updraft that carries it toward the distant peaks. Sarah watches its ascent, feeling her own spirit lifting with it, beyond pain, beyond limitation, into the boundless blue of possibility. And in that moment, she knows with absolute certainty that she is exactly where she is meant to be. Not despite her accident, but because of it. Not reduced by her injury, but expanded by it into versions of herself she never could have imagined. Later, as the sun sets over the Blue Ridge Mountains, three figures stand atop a rocky outcropping. A man, a woman leaning lightly on a cane, and a boy vibrating with excitement as he unpacks a carefully prepared picnic. Their laughter carries on the evening breeze, a counterpoint to the ancient song of the mountains. And if the woman's steps were slow and measured on the climb, if she needed to rest more than once along the way, it matters little now. For she stands at the summit nonetheless, gazing out at a world that once seemed forever beyond her reach. In the distance, lights begin to twinkle at Eagle's Nest as evening falls. Tomorrow will bring new patience, new challenges, new paths to forge. But tonight belongs to this moment, to the family taking shape on the mountainside, to the future they are choosing together. Sarah Mitchell closes her eyes, feeling the mountain breeze against her face, the solid stone beneath her feet, the presence of Jack and Noah beside her. In her mind, she hears the echo of Rebecca's words from her dream months ago. Remember what it feels like. And she does. Not just the memory of dancing, but the reality of standing, of climbing, of loving, of building something new from the ruins of what was lost. When she opens her eyes again, the first stars are appearing in the deepening blue above. Jack's arm slips around her waist, steadying her as Noah points excitedly at a shooting star streaking across the darkening sky. "Make a wish!" the boy exclaims. Sarah smiles, leaning into Jack's embrace as they watch the celestial display together. "No need," she whispers. "I already have everything I could wish for." And in the quiet of the mountain evening, surrounded by the family she never expected to find and the future she never imagined possible, Sarah Mitchell knows it to be true. The dance continues. Different steps, different music, but the same joy and movement. The same celebration of what it means to be fully, completely alive. Phoenix rising from ashes to sky,